Chapter 904 Buddhist Tao Fire. Chapter 904 Buddhist Tao Fire. Holy! Nangong Ling's lips quivered and he almost bit his tongue. This was way too generous. No matter what, perfect-grade dermic weapons were extremely rare. Although they were disciples of the largest weapon refinement sect in Tianhuang mainland and were experienced and knowledgeable, they had never seen anyone who could give away perfect dermic weapons so casually. His expression and casualness were akin to throwing a cabbage by the roadside. Ru Xin's reaction was even more intense. She jumped up from her spot and ran to Su Zimo's side. Before Su Zimo could react, Ru Xin had already tugged at his sleeves and shouted sweetly, "Little Uncle Master, little Uncle Master, little Uncle Master." It seemed like she was not going to stop until Su Zimo took out his gift. Su Zimo flipped his palm and waved it in front of Ru Xin. Ru Xin's eyes widened instantly. It was a scarlet pearl with a cloud-like pattern on it, looking extremely mystical. Although the bead was not a dermic weapon, both Nangong Ling and Lu Hanyan looked envious. This was a fire cloud bead. When carried by cultivators who cultivated fire elemental cultivation techniques, it would have the efforts required by them to do anything. Fire cloud beads were extremely rare and were consumables. If they were placed in an auction house, the price would not be lower than a perfected Lord dermic weapon. "Thank you, little Uncle Master." Ru Xin took the fire cloud bead over hurriedly and excitedly as she exclaimed in joy. Ru Xin had already thought things through. In any case, she had to acknowledge this Uncle Master sooner or later. It wasn't as though she would die just by addressing him as Uncle Master. Most importantly, there were treasures to be gained. Furthermore, this Uncle Master seemed to be very generous and foolish. If she were to fool him more in the future, she might be able to obtain more treasures. There was no way she could know that Su Zimo truly did not care to give away those two items. He had many treasures on him and he had quite a few more perfected Lord dermic weapons as such. Most importantly, he was no longer interested in treasures of this level. Although perfected Lord dermic weapons were rare, Su Zimo could crush them easily with the Creation Green Lotus. The power of the Creation Green Lotus was comparable to a Khanate Dao being dermic weapon. Nangong Ling's eyes turned red when he saw both Lu Hanyan and Ru Xin holding their treasures. He could not stay still any longer. They had just entered the nascent soul realm and did not have perfected Lord dermic weapons. Furthermore, naturally, it was better if they had more of such treasures. An additional perfected Lord dermic weapon would raise his combat strength by a level. Nangong Ling was a little embarrassed as he came before Su Zimo reluctantly. He turned her head and called out softly, "Little Uncle Master." Su Zimo pretended not to hear him and asked with a fake smile, "What did you say?" Nangong Ling was furious internally and grit his teeth. Ru Xin, who was at the side, could not stop laughing gloatingly as though she wanted nothing more than to wreak havoc in the world. "A man knows when to bow and submit. I'll endure it." Nangong Ling lamented internally, "When my cultivation and strength surpass yours in the future, let's see how you're going to be my Uncle Master." At that thought, Nangong Ling straightened his neck and said loudly with a reckless expression, "I'm Nangong Ling, greetings, little Uncle Master. Please give me a gift." Nangong Ling thought that since he was going to be shameless, he might as well go all the way and brazenly ask for something. Furthermore, he had other intentions. The reason why he addressed Su Zimo as little Uncle Master was to remind the latter that he was too young and not qualified. Su Zimo looked at Nangong Ling meaningfully, as though he had read the latter's mind. Su Zimo nodded with a smile. "Good disciple nephew, how obedient." Nangong Ling nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. As Su Zimo spoke, he took out a black object from his storage bag and handed it to Nangong Ling. Nangong Ling fixed his gaze and his eyes were filled with disappointment and anger. That black object was the black shield that Wu Yuan used to defend against Su Zimo. Nangong Ling saw with his own eyes how the black shield was sent flying by Su Zimo's bare hand, shaking Wu Yuan half dead from the shock. From this, it could be seen that the black shield was useless and was merely trash. "Humph, what kind of an Uncle Master is this? All you know is how to tease others." Nangong Ling received the black shield and mumbled indignantly. Su Zimo replied indifferently, "If you don't like it, I'll change it for you." "There's no need." Nangong Ling shook his head hurriedly when he heard Su Zimo's words. If it was another one, it might not even be comparable to the black shield. Nangong Ling took another look at the black shield and exclaimed softly. Gradually he realized something strange. The shield was not a dermic weapon but the bones of some demon beast. That was why there were no dermic patterns. Nangong Ling knocked some more and his eyes lit up. If he was not wrong, the black shield should have been made from the bones of a mid-level fiend demon. Its defense was definitely comparable to a perfected Lord dermic weapon. This was a great gain. Nangong Ling was delighted and accepted the black shield hurriedly. In reality, Nangong Ling did not know the power of Su Zimo's punch. Although Su Zimo did not use his full strength, the shield was considered a treasure to be able to withstand a single punch from him without shattering. The three of them were naturally delighted after obtaining their treasures. Ru Xian rushed to speak, "Little Uncle Master, let's return to the sect. I'll show you around." "All right." Su Zimo nodded. With Ru Xian leading the way, Su Zimo followed behind. Lu Hanyin was half a body behind with Nangong Ling by her side. "Hanyin, it's all Wu Yuan's fault for summoning that formation." Nangong Ling sent a voice transmission secretly, "If not for the restriction of the formation, I'll definitely be able to kill my way out with you guys." "Hanyin, Little Uncle Master only has a higher cultivation realm advantage. When I reach late-stage nascent soul, I'll definitely be stronger than him." Along the way, Nangong Ling pestered Lu Hanyin to prove himself. Lu Hanyin smiled without saying anything. On the other side, Ru Xian was focused on Su Zimo completely. "Little Uncle Master, where are you from?" "Someone from the Middle Continent." "Little Uncle Master, you're lying. You clearly said that you're from another region." "Oh, is that so? Then I'm someone from another region." "Uncle Master, you're patronizing me." Ru Xian expressed her immense curiosity towards Su Zimo and could not wait to interrogate his entire lineage up till all 18 generations of his ancestors. However, Su Zimo was distracted and merely replied in a casual manner. "Little Uncle Master, what was with that golden flame you condensed earlier on?" Ru Xian could not help but ask. "We both cultivate the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. Why is your flame golden and much stronger?" This time round, even Nangong Ling and Lu Hanyin turned around and listened intently. The golden flame that Su Zimo released earlier on was way too shocking. It was only the size of a fist, but it suppressed the raging hellfire instantly. Furthermore, the golden flames were sacred and flawless, completely different from the Dao fire aura they cultivated. At that moment, Su Zimo was deep in thought as well, recalling the fight earlier on. The reason why the golden flames were different from Nangong Ling and the other two was because the golden flames were one of the Samadhi Dao flames that he had cultivated, the Buddhist Dao fire. Chapter 905 Brewing Storm. Chapter 905, Brewing Storm. Ever since he thought of the Samadhi Dao fire of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend, Su Zimo had already begun to cultivate in that direction and comprehend it. Although the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra was an Immortal sect cultivation technique, the first thing Su Zimo comprehended was the Dao fire of Buddhism. That was only logical. The black-haired essence spirit was infused with the sacred item of the Buddhist monasteries, the Siraka flower. As for the Siraka flower, it was a flower of flames to begin with. Coupled with the fact that Su Zimo cultivated the top cultivation techniques of the Buddhist monasteries, be it the Mystic Dermic Lotus Sutra or the Great Day Rulai Sutra, they were all supreme secret manuals of the Buddhist monasteries. At the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, Su Zimo comprehended Zen and chanted sutras for 20 years, accumulating a solid foundation. It was only logical that he could condense a Buddhist Dao fire. The scene that Nangong Ling and the other two saw was only Su Zimo exchanging blows with Wu Yuan. With a casual flick of his finger, the Dao fire of the Buddhist monasteries was formed and it looked casual. What the three of them could not see was a black-haired essence spirit chanting sutras in Su Zimo's consciousness. The illusory image of a great Buddha appeared and the sound of Sanskrit filled the air. It was vast and sacred, lasting and deafening. The black-haired essence spirit had already deduced the Immortal Sect's cultivation technique to its limits before condensing that golden Buddhist Dao fire. The hellfire that Wu Yuan cultivated leaned towards sinister darkness. Legend has it that the hellfire originated from the sinister purgatory beneath the 9 hells. It was truly difficult to tell who would be the victor if an immortal Dao fire was used to fight the hellfire. On the other hand, the Dao fire of the Buddhist monasteries was sacred and flawless. It was vast and could suppress the 9 hells and transcend the netherworld. It was a natural counter to the hellfire. Therefore, the moment the hellfire and Buddhist Dao fire clashed, the hellfire was suppressed. While chatting idly with Ru Xian, the four of them arrived at 100 Refinement Sect unknowingly. At the entrance stood a gigantic tripod that was dozens of feet tall. It looked majestic and magnificent. Su Zimo's group of 4 arrived at the entrance of the mountain and looked up at the gigantic tripod. All of them could feel how insignificant they were. There were many hundred refinement sect cultivators guarding the entrance. Most of them were at Foundation Establishment realm, and there were even 2 or 3 golden cores. When they saw Nangong Ling and the other 2, the cultivators revealed respectful expressions and greeted them with cupped fists. Greetings, Senior Brother Nangong, Senior Sister Lu and Senior Sister Ru Xian. Seniors, you have returned. How was your trip? Ru Xian chattered like a child in front of Su Zimo. However, in front of these sect disciples, she was still more normal and restrained. You guys can leave. There's nothing much. Ru Xian put on the airs of a senior sister and waved her sleeves with an indifferent expression. Everyone obeyed. One of the golden cores glanced at Su Zimo curiously and asked instinctively, Fellow Taoist, you are? Lu Hanyin and Ru Xian did not react much. However, Nangong Ling looked embarrassed. He was already extremely unwilling to acknowledge Su Zimo as his uncle master to begin with, and was even more afraid that others would know about it. Nangong Ling's face darkened when he heard that person's question and snapped, Why are you asking so much? Go back and guard the sect properly. The person was lambasted for nothing and had a confused expression, not knowing what mistake he had made. When Nangong Ling saw that the person was not leaving, he glared and said coldly, Why? Do I even have to inform you about somebody I brought back? And no. The person shrank his neck and retreated hurriedly. Su Zimo found it funny and did not interfere. After the 4 of them entered the 100 Refinement Sect, Nangong Ling was afraid that he would meet someone he knew and ask him the same question. Therefore he found an excuse and fled far away. With the accompaniment Lu Hanyin and Ru Xian, the 3 of them traveled smoothly. However, during this period of time, many cultivators looked over with envious gazes. 100 Refinement Sect was unlike Elixir Yang Sect or Thousand Crane Sect. 100 Refinement Sect specialized in weapon refinement, and they had to go through a lot of tempering. As such, most of the people in the sect were men and there were very few women. However, Lu Hanyin and Ru Xian were rare beauties. Be it the junior or senior brothers, many of them admired the both of them. When they saw the 2 of them accompanying a burly man to tour the sect, everyone felt like they were looking at a bull trampling on peonies. Who is that? I've never seen him before. He looks unfamiliar. I don't know why, but I feel like beating him up just by looking at him. Although their discussions were soft, Su Zimo heard them clearly. He merely smiled indifferently. He had already completed his mission by sending Tao Lord Extreme Fire safely. 3 months later, he would be attending the 1000 Crane Tea Banquet and would not be able to stay in 100 Refinement Sect for long. Even if people were dissatisfied, there would be no conflict. It was no wonder why 100 Refinement Sect was a major sect with a long history. Its foundation far surpassed Ethereal Peak. Immortal mountains towered within the sect and green water surrounded them. The buildings were grand and ancient. Every single tile and brick was made with extreme precision and could be considered as divine workmanship. Within the sect, there were all sorts of buildings that gave off a metallic feel. Lu Hanyin and Ru Xian brought Su Zimo to circle around before settling down in a cave abode. For the following period of time, Su Zimo rarely left his cave abode. He merely took out the heaven-slaying sword art and tried to comprehend it daily. This sword art was not to be underestimated. If he could comprehend it as soon as possible, it would be a huge boost to his combat strength. Although he rarely left his cave abode, Lu Hanyin and Ru Xian visited him frequently. Su Zimo could sense that the 2 women were extremely curious about him. Only Ru Xian's curiosity was fully expressed up front. However, Lu Hanyin kept it in her heart in secret. During this period of time, through casual chats with the 2 women, Su Zimo deduced that 100 Refinement Sect had done everything they could to prepare for Tao Lord Extreme Fire's reconstruction of his body. According to the 2 women, many experts of the sect came out of seclusion during this period of time. From void reversion Tao beings to Dharma characteristic Tao Lords, there were often experts of the sect who went out to collect top-grade materials. In fact, the 2 have even heard that conjoint body mighty figures of the sect had appeared, but they did not know the reason why. Experts of 100 Refinement Sect also made frequent major moves and took action in the major trading workshops and auction houses, spending huge amounts of money to purchase some rare materials. There were also cultivators from Elixir Yang Sect who purchased large amounts of spirit liquids and elixirs. Dao Lord Extreme Fire's return was still a secret. At the very least, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian did not know the reason. Dao Lord Extreme Fire was only an expert at the Dharma characteristic realm. However, Su Zimo had not expected that the former's return 5,000 years later would be valued so highly by the sect. Even conjoint body mighty figures of the sect came forth for him. This was the first time Su Zimo realized that Dao Lord Extreme Fire was far from simple. He was happy for Dao Lord Extreme Fire and worried at the same time. The stronger Dao Lord Extreme Fire was, the more the news must not be leaked. That was because if anyone heard that Dao Lord Extreme Fire had revived, they would definitely be plotting something. Not everyone hoped for Dao Lord Extreme Fire to be alive. 3 months later was the 1,000 Crane Tea Banquet and a fight for weapon refinement. It was as though everything was happening at the same time. Although the cultivation world was still rather peaceful right now, Su Zimo could sense that a storm was brewing. Chapter 906 Killing Intent of Hellfire Hall. Chapter 906 Killing Intent of Hellfire Hall. 2 months later, Hellfire Hall. In a sinister and cold hall, there were only a few flickering candles. A figure sat high in the middle, looking down at a cultivator of Hellfire Hall. Reporting to the Palace Lord. The cultivator of Hellfire Hall knelt on one knee and said in a deep voice, "For the past 2 months, 100 Refinement Sect has caused a huge commotion. There are cultivators of the 100 Refinement Sect in all the major trading workshops and auction houses. They're buying all sorts of treasures and elixirs. I wonder what they're for." The one sitting at the top was the Master of Hellfire Hall. Ha! Expressionlessly, the Master of Hellfire Hall asked indifferently, "What sort of treasures?" The cultivator from Hellfire Hall said, 40 days ago, a cultivator saw Dao Lord Tianxing of 100 Refinement Sect appear at the auction house to buy a sun stone." The Master of Hellfire Hall frowned. "A month ago, I heard from Elixir Yang Sect cultivators that the Sect Master of 100 Refinement Sect bought a lot of blood congealing pills, spirit flesh pills and a large amount of life spirit spring water." After pausing for a moment, the person continued, "A few days ago, there were rumors that someone saw a conjoint body mighty figure of 100 Refinement Sect appear in exchange for a heavenly constellation stone in a trade fair." Swoosh! Suddenly, 2 balls of flames burned in the eyes of the Master of Hellfire Hall, dark and sinister. The atmosphere in the hall turned sinister. The cultivator of Hellfire Hall knelt on the ground and kept silent out of fear. A moment later, a voice sounded from above, "Are there any other movements from 100 Refinement Sect?" And no. The person's voice trembled slightly. The Master of Hellfire Hall asked again, "Have you found out the identity of the cultivator who killed Wu Yuan and the others 2 months ago?" "Not yet." The Hellfire Hall cultivator gulped and said, "I heard from our spies in 100 Refinement Sect that the cultivator has been living in seclusion ever since he entered the sect and has barely shown himself. That person appears occasionally and is often immersed by an ancient scroll in his hands. He seems like a nerd." "Nerd?" The Master of Hellfire Hall said coldly, "You're saying that Wu Yuan and 9 others died in the hands of a nerd?" The cultivator of Hellfire Hall was so scared that he was sweating profusely and did not dare to make a sound. The voice of the Master of Hellfire Hall seemed to have come from the depths of the 9 hells, chilling to the bones. "After investigating for 2 months, you can only tell me that this person is a nerd and that there's no other information?" There is." The cultivator of Hellfire Hall nodded repeatedly. "That person's name is Mo Ling and he's at late-stage nascent soul realm. I heard that he's only more than 100 years old. Furthermore, Euro." "What more?" The moment the cultivator of Hellfire Hall hesitated, the voice of the Master of Hellfire Hall sounded, sending chills down his spine. The Hellfire Hall cultivator shuddered and said hurriedly, "Furthermore, I heard that Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian of 100 Refinement Sect are extremely close to this man. They seem to call him Uncle Master." "Uncle Master?" The Master of Hellfire Hall frowned slightly. How was that possible? If Lu Hanyan addressed this person as Uncle Master, it meant that this person was a cultivator of the same generation as Dao Lord Scarlet Star. He had seen almost all the cultivators of that generation. How could there be a 100-year-old nascent soul? Our spies don't dare to get too close. The Hellfire Hall cultivator continued, "Furthermore, he said that every time he spied on that person from afar, that person would seem to be able to sense it. The person would always glance over in our spy's direction in a seemingly unintentional manner. A nascent soul more than 100 years old with such seniority? Fufu, interesting. The master of Hellfire Hall chuckled. You can leave first. Continue monitoring the 100 Refinement Sect. Understood. As though he was pardoned, the cultivator of Hellfire Hall fled from the place. Silence returned to the hall. A moment later, the voice of the master of Hellfire Hall sounded slowly. Sunstone, Heavenly Constellation Stone, Blood Congealing Pill, Life Spirit Spring Water Euro. Is someone trying to reconstruct a body? There's no mistake, those are top-grade materials for body reconstruction. A hunched figure slowly walked out from the darkness behind the master of Hellfire Hall. The intruder had white hair, cloudy eyes and an aged voice. He exuded a vicissitude aura on the verge of death, as though he could pass away at any moment. The master of Hellfire Hall seemed to have known that this person was behind him and was not surprised at all as he continued to mutter to himself. I'm just curious as to who could have alarmed so many cultivators of 100 Refinement Sect and caused such a huge commotion that even conjoint body mighty figures came forth for him. After a moment of silence, the master of Hellfire Hall shook his head. No matter how much I think about it, I can't think of anyone with that much power. Uncle Yu, can you think of anyone? The master of Hellfire Hall glanced sideways at the old man beside him. Uncle Yu shook his head. I don't know. Pausing for a moment, Uncle Yu said, should we mobilize our forces to secretly destroy the 100 Refinement Sect's search for materials? There's no need. The master of Hellfire Hall shook his head with a look of disdain in his eyes. These materials are used to create a Tao Lord's body. Even if a Tao Lord were to reconstruct his body, he wouldn't be a threat to us. Exuding a heroic aura, he waved his hand and said in a deep voice, the 100 Refinement Sect will suffer a crushing defeat at the 1,000 Crane Tea Banquet in another month. Even a conjoint body mighty figure is useless, let alone an additional Dharma characteristic Tao Lord in 100 Refinement Sect. Uncle Yu nodded as well. That's right. Although Lu Hanyan of 100 Refinement Sect is quite accomplished in weapon refinement, she's still much weaker than Ming Han. 100 Refinement Sect is bound to lose this weapon refinement battle. The master of Hellfire Hall said proudly, of course my disciple won't lose. After a moment, the master of Hellfire Hall seemed to have thought of something inside. Palace Lord, are you still thinking about the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra? Uncle Yu asked. That's right. The master of Hellfire Hall clenched his fists and said, this is a sore spot for me. I must obtain this cultivation technique. Right now there are only 4 people who know this cultivation technique. Uncle Yu said, Tao Lord Scarlet Star is not easy to deal with. Even if we capture him, he'll probably be like his master and won't tell us even if he dies. How about we attack his 3 disciples instead? Yes. The master of Hellfire Hall said, I've already sent out a group of void reversions to wait for an opportunity. We must capture Nangong Ling and the other 2 alive. However, the master of Hellfire Hall frowned and continued, there's something strange about that Mo Ling. I have a feeling that something is going to happen because of him. Uncle Yu bowed slightly. If you're worried, I'll make a trip personally. Uncle Yu, you don't have much lifespan left. I don't think it's a good idea to trouble you with such a small matter. Although the master of Hellfire Hall rejected it verbally, his eyes flickered and he was clearly tempted. No worries. Uncle Yu replied indifferently, I don't have much time left. Rather than sit here and wait for death, I might as well make a trip for you and kill off all variables. Ha 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 ha. The master of Hellfire Hall reared his head in laughter. Good. Back in the day, you were also a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord whose name shook the entire Tianhuang mainland. Although your lifespan is almost up, your combat strength is still there. With you taking action, no matter if Mo Ling is a nascent soul or a void reversion, he will have to surrender obediently. Chapter 907 Wind Cloud Gathering. Chapter 907, Wind Cloud Gathering. 100 Refinement Sect. For the past 2 months, Su Zimo spent most of his time comprehending the Heaven-Slaying Sword art and immersed himself in it. On the surface, the Heaven-Slaying Sword art looked like an ordinary ancient book. If he had not known beforehand, Su Zimo would not have thought that the ancient book was related to the legendary 3 ancient sword arts. Furthermore, it was difficult to store the Heaven-Slaying Sword art in his storage bag. After thinking about it, Su Zimo decided to take it out and cultivate it openly. Even if someone were to bump into him, Su Zimo would not hide anything. He held the heaven-slaying sword art in his hands and focused on his comprehension, ignoring everyone else. Therefore, in the eyes of many cultivators, although Su Zimo looked rough, he was like a bookworm in the mortal world. No one would have expected that Su Zimo, who carried an ancient book all day and never shied away, was cultivating an ancient and shocking sword art. Logically speaking, if it was truly a powerful cultivation technique or secret skill, anyone would look for a secret place to cultivate for fear of being seen by others. No one would be as fearless and open as Su Zimo. Although he held the heaven-slaying sword art all day long, he was not worried that others would see its contents. That was because every time he comprehended the ancient book, Su Zimo would use his right eye that contained the illumination stone. If he were to look with his left eye, he would only see a blinding light. His vision would turn white and he would not be able to see anything. Even so, Su Zimo would still feel a piercing pain if he looked at it with his right eye for too long. At that moment he would have to stop and take a break. He would leave his cave abode to take a walk and look into the distance to relax his eyes. During this period of time, Nangong Ling rarely came to his place. It was as though the former had a motivation to surpass him as soon as possible. Lu Hanyin and Ru Xian visited frequently. Ru Xian was carefree and outgoing. She would explain everything that happened within and outside the sect during this period of time with great familiarity. Lu Hanyin had a calm personality and rarely spoke. She merely came to sit in at his place. Su Zimo could sense the nervousness and worry in Lu Hanyin's heart. In a few days it would be the 1,000 Crane Tea banquet. At that time, there would be a fight between 100 Refinement Sect and Hellfire Palace for weapon refinement and everyone would be watching. As the representative of 100 Refinement Sect, although she looked calm, the pressure in her heart was immense and she tried her best to suppress the anxiety in her heart. Every time Lu Hanyin looked over, Su Zimo would smile with a gentle gaze. At that moment, Su Zimo would recite a Buddhist sutra internally meant for calming one's mind and heart and his body would emit a peaceful aura, calming Lu Hanyin's mind. Actually, it was an invisible aura. Legend has it that the butcher who killed people like flies would lay down his butcher knife under the gaze of an eminent monk with profound Buddhist dharma. That was the reason why one could wash away the killing intent within their body after following an accomplished monk for a long time. Su Zimo realized what was happening. Although he was Tao Lord Extreme Fire's disciple, he did not know much about forging dermic weapons and was far inferior to Lu Hanyin who had been cultivating in 100 Refinement Sect since she was young. He could not help much with this matter. The only thing he could do was to help Lu Hanyin relax and adjust her mental state. This day, Su Zimo was comprehending the heaven-slaying sword art in his cave abode when he heard the sound of someone knocking on the door. Immediately after, the door to his cave abode was pushed open. Even without looking, Su Zimo could guess that it was definitely Ru Xian. "Little Uncle Master, I'm here to visit you again." Ru Xian's voice sounded before she even arrived. Slowly, Su Zimo snapped out of his focus and looked up. Lu Hanyin was not the only one beside Ru Xian. Nangong Ling had actually arrived as well, although he looked a little reluctant. "Little Uncle Master, are you still reading?" Ru Xian asked casually. Suddenly, she leaned forward and looked at the ancient book in Su Zimo's hands. "What's written here?" For the past few days, when Ru Xian saw that Su Zimo was immersed in the book, she did not mind initially. However, she became even more curious later on. Now she launched a surprise visit. She wanted to see what was written in the ancient book that could make Su Zimo so immersed in it. In the end, Ru Xian was disappointed. The ancient book was blank with seemingly nothing in it. Ru Xian frowned and was about to take a closer look when she felt a sudden sharp pain in her eyes. She exclaimed and took 2 steps back. Unknowingly, 2 streams of tears rolled down her cheeks. This time round, Ru Xian was shocked. In that instant, she felt like her eyes were going to go blind if she continued staring at that ancient book. Ru Xian looked at Su Zimo with a hint of fear. If that was her reaction with a single glance, she could not imagine how her little Uncle Master managed to survive poring over the book the entire day. "Is there anything?" Su Zimo asked when he saw the 3 of them together. Ru Xian said hurriedly, "The wind cloud gathering has already begun. Let's go take a look. I've been suffocating in the sect for the past 2 months." A month before the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, there would be a large-scale gathering in Wind Cloud City which was located in the middle of the 4 unorthodox groups. Apart from the 4 unorthodox groups, the super sects, aristocratic families and even some itinerant cultivators of the Middle Continent would gather here. The gathering would last for a month until the 1,000-crane tea party began. At this gathering there would be many treasures, elixirs, ancient books, secret skills, remnant beasts and divine weapons. There was everything in the cultivation world. Cultivators who participated in the 1,000-crane tea party would usually come to Wine Cloud City to see if they could buy what they needed. Or perhaps if they could unearth some rare treasures. Simply put, they were there to pick up the spoils. For the past few years, there would always be some treasures that would be discovered at the Wind Cloud gathering that envied others. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. If it was any other time, it would not have been a big deal for him to visit this Wind Cloud gathering. However, right now, a storm was brewing and countless eyes were staring at 100 Refinement Sect. It wasn't wise for Lu Hanyin and the other two to choose to leave the sect at this time. Forget it. Su Zimo shook his head. I remember that Tao Lord Scarlet Star told you guys to stay in the sect during this period of time and not wander around. We've stayed inside for 2 months and the pent-up frustration is killing me. Ru Xin pouted and looked aggrieved. Nangong Ling raised his brows. Junior sister, don't worry. With me by your side, I won't let anything happen to you. There are some people in our sect that although are senior they are timid. Let's go ourselves. Nangong Ling was clearly referring to Su Zimo. Su Zimo smiled indifferently and did not hold it against him. Nangong Ling loved Lu Hanyin. Yet, Lu Hanyin had been extremely close to Su Zimo during this period of time and Nangong Ling clearly viewed him as an opponent. It was only natural for Nangong Ling to want to compete with him in every aspect. Su Zimo said in a low voice, if you guys want to join the gathering, the 3 of you won't be enough. You'll have to get a few seniors from the sect to accompany you. It's best if you have Dharma characteristic experts. How is that possible? Ru Xian rolled her eyes. I don't know what happened to the sect during this period of time. The experts of the sect are so busy that none of them will have the time to accompany us to the gathering. Chapter 908 Jian Wuzong. Chapter 908, Jian Wuzong. No. Su Zimo shook his head and said resolutely, it's too risky for the 3 of you to leave at such a sensitive time without the seniors of the sect accompanying you. He was younger than Nangong Ling and the other 2. However, he surpassed them in terms of seniority. He could not watch Nangong Ling and the other 2 take the risk. Furthermore, for the past 2 months, every time he looked at the heaven-slaying sword art for a long time and left his cave abode for a breather, he would feel like he was being watched. If that person was a disciple of 100 Refinement Sect, it would be fine if he was merely curious. If it was a spy from Hellfire Hall or other sects planted into 100 Refinement Sect, their every move would be exposed. In other words, there was a high chance that they would be targeted the moment they left the sect. Little Uncle Master, it's fine. Ru Xian said coquettishly, Wind Cloud City is in the middle of the 4 unorthodox groups and isn't too far away from our 100 Refinement Sect. What danger could there be? Su Zimo was about to shake his head in rejection when he caught sight of Lu Hanyin who was standing beside him. Although this quiet woman did not speak, she looked at him with a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Su Zimo's heart softened. Lu Hanyin had been under too much pressure recently. This trip might be able to ease her nervousness. At that thought, Su Zimo was decided. Nangong Ling looked at Su Zimo and harumphed. Who said that the seniors of the sect are so busy? Our little Uncle Master is so free. Rising, Su Zimo said indifferently, all right, I'll accompany you guys for a walk. This time round it was Nangong Ling's turn to be surprised. Initially, he was merely making a casual remark to goad Su Zimo, to think that the latter would agree to it in an unusual break of character. Nangong Ling felt regret and grumbled. All right. Ru Xian clapped and beamed. Even Lu Hanyin heaved a sigh of relief. The conflicted look on her face seemed to have faded a lot as her eyes shone brightly. She bowed towards Su Zimo and said gently, Thank you, Uncle Master. There's no problem with me accompanying you guys to the gathering, but I have to remind you. Su Zimo's expression was stern as he said in a deep voice, the 3 of you may have fun, but you have to stay within 30 feet around me. Can you do that? Yes. Ru Xian urged and pulled on Su Zimo's sleeves, walking outside while muttering, Little Uncle Master, you sure are naggy. Nangong Ling pursed his lips and muttered softly, So what if I'm within 30 feet of you? Does that make me immortal? Before he could finish his sentence, Nangong Ling felt his neck tighten as he was lifted into the air by his neck. Who? Nangong Ling's expression was flustered and his face was flushed red. his legs kicked wildly in midair and he felt as though all his strength had vanished without a trace. Right then, a rough face appeared before him. Su Zimo grabbed Nangong Ling with one hand and said with a fake smile, "I can't guarantee that I can turn you immortal, but at least I can protect your life. Why you let go of me?" Nangong Ling tried his best to channel his dermic powers and blood qi. However, for some reason, he could not muster any strength under Su Zimo's grip and could only let the latter carry him. Ha 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 ha. Naturally, Wuxian was fearless and burst into laughter. Nangong Ling felt even more humiliated and nearly fainted on the spot. All of a sudden, he felt his body relax and he fell, regaining his freedom. Nangong Ling was enraged and was about to argue with Su Zimo when he realized that the three of them had already left the cave abode and were heading outside. Nangong Ling chased after him indignantly and remained silent. After all, Su Zimo was his little uncle master. He could not possibly fight Su Zimo in public. If his master were to find out about this, he would probably be kicked out of the sect. Arriving outside the sect, Wuxian slapped her storage bag and summoned a spirit vessel that expanded rapidly with tea and spirit fruits. Everything they required could be found within it. "Little Uncle Master, let's go." With that said, Wuxian jumped up first with Su Zimo and the others following closely behind. Now that he had the spirit vessel to travel, Su Zimo was bored with the freed time and took out the heaven-slaying sword art to continue cultivating. During this period of time, his entire focus was on the heaven-slaying sword art. Whenever he was tired, he would rest for a while before continuing to comprehend. Su Zimo had a feeling that he was about to crack the surface of the sword art. The spirit vessel sped for half a day before slowing down. Looking ahead, the outline of a gigantic city gradually became clearer on the horizon. Wind Cloud City. Its name implied that it was a place where heroes gathered. Before they arrived at Wind Cloud City, there were already many cultivators in the vicinity. Some people flew on swords. Some people rode on the winds. Some cultivators rode on auspicious clouds while some perfected lords rode on red-headed immortal cranes. Putting away the spirit vessel, Su Zimo's group of 4 descended in Wind Cloud City. The city was huge and bustling. Cultivators from various major sects and factions could be seen everywhere. On both sides of the road were countless stalls. Divine weapons could be seen everywhere. Ancient manuals and secret skills were everywhere. There were all sorts of elixirs and talismans that were dazzling. Some of the cultivators were even more straightforward and did not care about their immortal demeanor as they shouted at the top of their lungs to sell their items. It was rare to witness such a lively scene and it was clear that Lu Hanyan's mood improved tremendously. It was as though the pressure from the weapon refinement competition was gone. Wuxian bounced around every stall and fiddled with the items curiously. However, she did not buy it and many people rolled their eyes. Nangong Ling followed closely behind Lu Hanyan and paid attention to the gaze of his crush, ready to help her buy the treasures she wanted at any moment. Su Zimo was still the same as before, holding the heaven-slaying sword art in his hands and followed behind the 3 of them lazily. He was indeed comprehending the heaven-slaying sword art. However, at the same time, the scarlet-haired Yin spirit hid in a corner of his consciousness and did not let down its guard, paying attention to its surroundings. "Look over there. The paragon of soaring feather sect, Wu Tianyu, has appeared." Wu Tianyu, rank 11 of the phenomenon ranking this time round. To think that he would arrive so early. Let's go take a look. I haven't seen what a rank 11 cultivator on the phenomenon ranking looks like. Many cultivators discussed and surged in that direction. The cultivators on the phenomenon ranking were the center of attention no matter where they went. "Fellow Taoist, may I ask if you're the 83rd on the phenomenon ranking, Nangong Ling?" Right then, a cultivator appeared and asked Nangong Ling with cupped fists. Nangong Ling did not say anything and merely stood with his hands behind his back, nodding with a proud expression. The cultivator had a delighted expression and said hurriedly, "It's truly fellow Taoist Nangong. I've been admiring your reputation for a long time. It's truly a blessing to be able to meet you here." Right then, another commotion broke out from the crowd behind him. "Look, it's Jian Wuzong." "Ah, it's him." The cultivator who was initially standing in front of Nangong Ling was even more agitated. As though he could no longer see Nangong Ling, he followed the crowd and headed straight for Jian Wuzong. Even Nangong Ling revealed a hint of fear and whispered, "Jian Wuzong, 3rd on the phenomenon ranking." Chapter 909 Lava Crystal. Chapter 909, Lava Crystal. Nangong Ling seemed to be from an extraordinary background and was filled with pride from the depths of his bones. Furthermore, he could be considered as a paragon and was prideful by nature. Su Zimo rarely saw him reveal such an expression. Su Zimo smiled gently. Seems like you truly admire this Jian Wuzong. Humph. Nangong Ling harumphed when he heard that. Jian Wuzong, third on the phenomenon ranking, comprehended the strongest phenomenon of sword Dao, all swords united. All swords must submit to this phenomenon. When he heard that, Su Zimo was slightly stunned as he recalled an old friend. His old friend had also comprehended the Golden Core phenomenon, all swords united, during the phenomenon ranking competition 100 years ago and defeated the paragon of sword sect at that time, Hang Chuyu, shocking the world. Dugu Jian. Although Su Zimo said that it was an old friend, he was not familiar with this person. Or rather, it was as though no one in this world was familiar with him. This person exuded a loneliness that was isolated from the world. It was as though he only had the supreme sword Dao in his heart. His eyes were empty and blank. Only when he drew his sword would his eyes shine with an unparalleled brilliance. Su Zimo had a good impression of this person. It was not only because Dugu Jian had helped him before. More than that, back in Myriad Phenomenon City, even nascent souls had to avoid the slaughter of the Rakshasa and God race. Yet Dugu Jian stood out. He feared nothing. That was the true spirit of sword Dao. He would rather break than bend and press forward. Dugu Jian was the first sword cultivator that Su Zimo had encountered who was true to the sword Dao. Naturally, Nangong Ling did not know what Su Zimo was thinking at that moment. He merely thought that Su Zimo did not understand the terror of all swords united. Nangong Ling continued, if you don't understand, let me put it more simply. In the face of Jian Wuzong, the combat strength of all sword cultivators will be reduced. The might of all the sword techniques that attack Jian Wuzong will decrease. All swords will bow down. Jian Wuzong is the king of the Dao of the sword. Oh. Su Zimo was not interested in Jian Wuzong and replied in a patronizing manner. Nangong Ling was naturally angry when he saw Su Zimo's casual attitude. He pouted. Some people naturally can't understand the shock of the fight for the phenomenon ranking and the resplendent scene of paragons clashing since they had never witnessed it personally. Senior brother Nangong, that's enough. Ru Xin could not take it anymore and frowned slightly. Little Uncle Master, don't lower yourself to his level. Senior brother Nangong has no ill intentions. Su Zimo smiled indifferently and continued to comprehend the sword art with the ancient book in his hands. At the side, Lu Hanyin came to a stall and stood there for a long time, as though she had discovered something. The owner of the stall was also a nascent soul cultivator, but he did not seem to have much lifespan left. There were many random items in the stall and everything was messy. With a casual glance, Su Zimo saw that there was nothing of value in the stall. His gaze shifted to a black stone and his heart skipped a beat. At that moment he had just finished reading the heaven-slaying sword art and the illumination stone appeared in his right eye, turning it completely white. It allowed him to see unusual things. Although the black stone looked like a lava or on the surface, there was an egg-sized scarlet crystal within. Lava crystal. It was a top-grade treasure. In the depths of the lava cave, flames burned endlessly. These crystals could only take form after 10,000 years of nurturing, and the power of heaven and earth they possessed was rich and pure. Most importantly, the lava crystal possessed immense fire element dermic powers and was one of the materials required for Dao Lord Extreme Fire to reconstruct his body. To think that they would actually bump into a treasure on this trip. Fellow Taoist, how much is this flying sword? Lu Hanyin squatted down and pointed to a flying sword with 2 dermic patterns on the stall, asking softly. What's so good about this flying sword? It's a middle-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapon, and the defective products that we failed in weapon refinement are all of this grade. Nangong Ling frowned and murmured. The stall owner was expressionless and coughed a few times before saying slowly, I only want elixirs that can increase my lifespan. I don't want anything else. Ha. Nangong Ling sneered when he heard that and could not help but mock. Fellow Taoist, elixirs that can increase one's lifespan in the cultivation world are extremely precious and rare. You can't even exchange for a single elixir with all these rubbish. Give up. Normally speaking, the items in the stall were indeed worthless. Apart from the lava crystal. However, Lu Hanyin did not leave. She continued to pick and choose, seemingly casually passing the black stone over as well before saying, "I'll use a spirit longevity pill to exchange for all of these." Ah. Ru Xian could not help but tug at Lu Hanyan's sleeves and send a voice transmission. "Senior sister, this will be a loss." Although the spirit longevity pill could only extend one's lifespan by 50 years, it was already quite rare. Su Zimo stood silently without saying anything. Lu Hanyan seemed to have noticed that the black stone was extraordinary as well and decided to buy it. The stall owner froze for a moment and stared at Lu Hanyan hesitantly. To be able to cultivate to this realm with their lifespans almost depleted, all of them were sharp and experienced. At that moment he could vaguely sense that there seemed to be a treasure in his stall. However, when Lu Hanyan took out the spirit longevity pill, his body shuddered from the vibrant life force exuded by it. The stall owner hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth. "I'll trade." With that, he snatched the spirit longevity pill and pushed the items in front of Lu Hanyan. Su Zimo was relieved when he saw that. As long as the seller accepted the spirit longevity pill, he could not go back on his words. This was a tacit agreement in the cultivation world. "Hold on." Right then, an eagle-eyed cultivator with a cold expression squeezed in and grabbed the stall owner's wrist. "I'll give you 2 spirit longevity pills for this stone." The eagle-eyed cultivator was pointing at the black stone that contained the lava crystal. "This?" The stall owner was troubled. Under normal circumstances, the transaction was already complete since he accepted Lu Hanyan's spirit longevity pill. However, he did not expect someone to bid for 2 spirit longevity pills. At that moment, Nangong Ling snapped out of his stupor as well. He strode forward and stood before the eagle-eyed cultivator, asking coldly, "Why? You're trying to go against the rules?" Lu Hanyan put the black stone into her storage bag hurriedly. The eagle-eyed cultivator narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Kid, you're only at early-stage nascent soul realm. You'd better restrain yourself or you'll die prematurely." The eagle-eyed cultivator was only confident because he was a perfected nascent soul. Haha. Nangong Ling was so angry that he laughed instead. He released his aura and said loudly, "All right, I'll see what you've got today." "They're fighting. They're fighting." There's no doubt about a fight between an early stage and a perfected nascent soul. Nangong Ling, he's ranked 83 on the phenomenon ranking. It's hard to say who will win. Furthermore, he's backed by one of the 4 unorthodox groups, 100 Refinement Sect. Many cultivators gathered over. Listening to the discussions around him, the eagle-eyed cultivator glanced at the sect emblem on Nangong Ling's robes with a wary expression. After a moment of silence, the eagle-eyed cultivator did not dare to attack in the end. Gritting his teeth, he turned and left, looking at Nangong Ling with resentment before disappearing into the crowd. Chapter 910 Robbery. Chapter 910 Robbery. Wind Cloud City, Immortal Welcoming Restaurant. Su Zimo's group of 4 arrived at the place and sat by a random table on the 3rd floor by the window. There were many delicacies made from the flesh of remnant beasts and immortal fruits on the table. The fragrance was overwhelming. Ru Xian ate with relish. Earlier on, Nangong Ling had scared the other party off by revealing his name in front of everyone. Right now he was in a great mood with that flash of authority. Lu Hanyan leaned against the window and gazed at the bustling city. She smiled and felt much more relaxed. Su Zimo was still holding on to the heaven-slaying sword art and comprehending it as though nobody was around. "Senior sister, what's that black stone?" Ru Xian stuffed something in her mouth and sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness. "I'm not sure either. I just have a feeling that the stone is extraordinary." Lu Hanyan said, "When we return to the sect, I'll let Master identify it." Right then, a commotion broke out downstairs, growing louder. "Have you heard? 100 Refinement Sect cultivator found a treasure." "What?" "I think it's a lava crystal. There was nearly a fight earlier on." "Ah, that's a top-grade spirit material that even Dharma characteristic Tao Lords would wish for." When they heard the discussions, Nangong Ling and the other 2 exchanged glances with grim expressions. Their eyes were filled with mixed emotions. They were delighted because Lu Hanyan had indeed found a treasure. They were worried that the news had already spread. Furthermore, at this rate, the entire Wind Cloud City would know about it before long. Nangong Ling grit his teeth and said hatefully, "It must be that person who was upset that he did not obtain the treasure and leaked the news. Humans are truly sinister." Ru Xian said angrily. Su Zimo was not surprised. From the way the eagle-eyed cultivator left, he could guess that things were not over yet. Su Zimo glanced at the horizon. It's getting late. We've been circling Wind Cloud City for a long time. It's time to head back. This time round, Nangong Ling and the other two had no objections. The three of them knew that once news of the lava crystal spread, they would be the center of attention and countless eyes would be watching. The longer they stayed outside, the more dangerous it would be. At that moment, Nangong Ling and the other two could vaguely sense that there were more than 10 powerful auras approaching the Immortal welcoming restaurant. Many cultivators in the restaurant looked over with sparkling eyes. All of a sudden, heavy footsteps sounded from downstairs. The footsteps were extremely strange and every single step seemed to be able to affect everyone's hearts, causing them to skip a beat as well. Unknowingly, the tempo of everyone's heartbeats changed along with the change in pace of the footsteps. Gradually it matched the footsteps. After what seemed like a long time, a tall and mighty figure appeared at the top of the stairs. His long hair fluttered and his gaze was deep, as though it contained the vast starry skies. The footsteps stopped abruptly. It did not ring for a long time. It was only at this moment that everyone present felt that something was amiss. After the footsteps stopped, their heartbeats stopped as well. Some of the cultivators' expressions turned increasingly terrible. Their hearts stopped beating and their bloodlines stopped circulating. Some of the cultivators were extremely pale and beads of sweat rolled down their foreheads. Thud. Some cultivators could not take it and fell to the side. Some cultivators struggled to break free from the suffocating feeling and panted heavily, looking at the intruder in horror. The expressions of Nangong Ling and the other two turned extremely terrible as well. His footsteps alone could control the heartbeat of others. The person had just appeared and shocked everyone without saying anything. On the third floor, the only one who looked calm was Su Zimo, who was reading. However, in this massive restaurant, Su Zimo was truly inconspicuous and not many people noticed him. Sensing the pain of Nangong Ling and the other two, Su Zimo flicked his finger without raising his head. A clear and melodious sword hum burst forth from his fingertip. It was so soft that only Nangong Ling and the other two could hear it. However, it was this sword hum that made Nangong Ling and the other two's heartbeats return to normal. Their auras were stable and their bloodlines flowed again. Ru Xian whispered, Heavenly Dipper Sects Chengpeng, Phenomenon ranking 15. This is getting tricky. I hope they're not after us. Nangong Ling sent a voice transmission. He could use the status of 100 Refinement Sect and his reputation as the 83rd of the Phenomenon ranking to force back the eagle-eyed cultivator. As for Chengpeng, be it the sect behind him or his position in the Phenomenon ranking, he was superior to Nangong Ling. While Nangong Ling was praying, Chengpeng turned his head slightly and his gaze landed on the four of them. He walked over slowly with an expressionless face. Nangong Ling frowned. Ru Xian looked at Su Zimo and Nangong Ling, asking repeatedly through voice transmission, What should we do? What should we do? In the blink of an eye, Chengpeng had already arrived before Nangong Ling's group. His tall figure almost formed a shadow that shrouded everyone, causing Nangong Ling and the other two to feel a sense of pressure. Helpless, Nangong Ling could only grit his teeth and stand up, cupping his fists. I'm Nangong Ling of 100 Refinement Sect. Greetings, fellow Taoist Chengpeng. Those three are also cultivators of 100 Refinement Sect. Nangong Ling gave a brief introduction with a smile. Lu Hanyin and Ru Xian stood up and cupped their fists towards Chengpeng, nodding. Su Zimo was the only one who sat on the spot motionlessly, looking at the ancient book in his hands as though he was completely immersed in it. Chengpeng swept his gaze and did not take it to heart when he saw that Su Zimo was also a nascent soul cultivator and looked unfamiliar. I heard that you bought a lava crystal. Chengpeng said bluntly, I need this lava crystal. What do you want in exchange? This? Nangong Ling frowned. Chengpeng's words were extremely domineering without any room for negotiation. Nangong Ling smiled embarrassedly. Fellow Taoist, we were the ones who bought this lava crystal first. It's of great use to us. I'll say it again. Chengpeng's gaze was cold as he interrupted Nangong Ling, I want this lava crystal. Do you want to trade or not? Nangong Ling's expression was terrible. From the looks of it, Chengpeng was bent on obtaining the lava crystal. However, if they were to fight, he was definitely not a match for that person. Even if the three of them worked together, it wouldn't work. He was ranked 83 on the phenomenon ranking while Qing Peng was ranked 15. The difference in their combat strength was way too great. Nangong Ling looked at Lu Hanyan and took a deep breath. Clenching his fists, he said in a deep voice, "Fellow Taoist, Heavenly Dipper Sect is one of the 9 major immortal sections. Our 100 Refinement Sect is also one of the 4 unorthodox groups. All of us belong to the righteous Tao. Are you thinking of taking it by force?" Fufufu. Qing Peng laughed, his eyes filled with mockery. 4 unorthodox groups? In another month, your 100 Refinement Sect will be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. Do you think I'll have any reservations? Before he could finish his sentence, Qing Peng's gaze intensified and he reached out with his palm. Stars filled the skies and enveloped Nangong Ling's group of 4 with a terrifying might. Pust. Nangong Ling and the other 2 were shocked. They had not expected Qing Peng to be so domineering and brazen as to rob them openly in Wind Cloud City. Furthermore, the 3 of them felt as though their dermic powers were restricted by the stars and could not be channeled at all. Chapter 9:11, First Reveal. Chapter 9:11, First Reveal. It was suffocating. The intense feeling of suffocation caused the expressions of Nangong Ling and the other 2 to change. Although they were both on the phenomenon ranking, the difference in combat strength between Nangong Ling and Qing Peng was immense. Under the suppression of the stars, Nangong Ling channeled his spirit consciousness continuously and channeled his blood qi and dermic powers. The veins on his neck were already popping out, but he could not retaliate. The table and chair beneath him had already been reduced to dust. If Nangong Ling was already in such a state, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian were even worse off. The bodies of the 2 women trembled slightly and a series of crackling sounds could be heard from their bodies. It was as though their bones were about to fall apart. Ah! Sensing all of this, Nangong Ling reared his head and howled into the skies. He was on the brink of insanity as his eyes turned bloodshot. His glabella shone as he conjured hand seals with both hands. The Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra was circulating continuously. Finally, 2 scarlet flames appeared on Nangong Ling's hands, flickering. Fu. Qing Peng's gaze was deep like the vast starry skies as he sneered, "How dare you fight against the bright moon with the light of a firefly? The futile struggles of a cornered beast. Destroy." His aura surged and the stars conjured by his palm became even more corporeal, thicker and more domineering, as though he wanted to crush Nangong Ling and the other 2 into minced meat. Splash! Splash! The flames on Nangong Ling's hands were extinguished instantly by the suppression of the stars the moment they rose. Nangong Ling's eyes dimmed. He had not expected the difference between the 2 of them to be so great in a real fight. More than that, he did not expect that the Heavenly Dipper Sect cultivators would dare to attack them and steal their treasures in front of everyone in Wind Cloud City. If Qing Peng's attitude towards 100 Refinement Sect was merely a small reflection of the situation, in that case the danger of 100 Refinement Sect might be even greater than they had imagined. In that case it was truly irrational for them to leave the sect. There were probably countless pairs of eyes that were watching them from the surroundings of the Immortal welcoming restaurant. Qing Peng was just first to make a move. He recalled his master, Tao Lord Scarlet Star, repeatedly reminding them not to leave the sect before the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Sigh. Nangong Ling sighed and the face of the green-robed man flashed through his mind. If only we listened to Little Uncle Master. If I didn't try to spite Little Uncle Master, I wouldn't have implicated Han Yan into danger. I really deserve to die. Nangong Ling's eyes dimmed and he felt a sense of regret. Right then he heard a voice. It was neither loud nor soft and was calm with a hint of mockery. How dare you claim to be the moon with your capabilities? It was Little Uncle Master. Nangong Ling was shocked. Little Uncle Master can still speak under that pressure? He glanced over instinctively. Initially, Su Zimo was reading with his head lowered. However, at that moment, he raised his head slowly with a calm gaze. He closed 2 fingers together to form a sword and swiped it gently in Qing Peng's direction. That action seemed so elegant and casual. However, the effect was earth-shattering. Shing. A streak of sword chi burst forth with a blinding white light. Under Nangong Ling's gaze, the stars that were initially suppressing them were sliced into 2 by the sword chi. It was an extremely shocking sight. The gigantic river of stars was sliced into 2 by a white sword chi and froze instantly. Bang, bang, bang. The stars in the skies fell and the dermic art was destroyed by a single sword chi, turning into nothingness. When the heaven's killing intent is released, the stars are shifted out of alignment. A single killing intent was enough to throw even true stars into chaos. With that burst of sword chi, it was a piece of cake for him to destroy Cheng Peng's constellation dermic art. Cheng Peng's pupils constricted. Nangong Ling and the others were not directly involved and could not sense the power of the sword chi, however he could sense it even more clearly when he faced it directly. The killing intent released by the sword chi caused his scalp to tingle and his limbs to turn cold as his mind shuddered. How could there be such a terrifying sword chi in the world? This was practically destroying all life. The true terror was yet to come. After slicing the galaxy into two, the sword chi did not dissipate but continued slashing down towards Cheng Peng. Pust! Cheng Peng gasped and his expression changed. He had a hallucination that no dermic art, technique or weapon could defend against the sword chi. That sword chi was the most lethal. Cheng Peng was ranked 15 on the phenomenon ranking after all. The moment the stars dispersed, he reacted and slapped his storage bag. Boom. A gigantic shield stood before him. The shield was etched with the vast firmaments, stars, sun and moon. After injecting dermic powers, 5 bedazzling patterns lit up. It was a perfect-grade defensive perfected Lord dermic weapon. In the cultivation world, offensive dermic weapons were more common and defensive dermic weapons were rare, let alone perfect-grade ones. From this, one could see Cheng Peng's status among the Heavenly Dipper Sect disciples. The moment the shield was summoned, the sword chi descended. Clang. The sword chi collided with the shield with a metallic sound. The sword chi vanished as though it was blocked by the perfect-grade shield dermic weapon. That was everyone's first reaction. However, everyone's eyes narrowed and their expressions changed immediately after. The light on Cheng Peng's shield dimmed rapidly and its aura dissipated. It was as though the dermic weapon had suffered a devastating blow and was crippled. All of a sudden, a change happened. Cheng Peng, who was initially hiding behind the shield, suddenly shrieked and staggered back repeatedly. Blood gushed out and a severed arm was raised high. Boom. Immediately after, the shield fell to the ground and split into two. The cut was neat as though it was cut into two diagonally by some divine weapon. Everyone gradually came to their senses as they looked at Cheng Peng, who was lying on the ground with a pale expression. The sword chi released by the green-robed man sliced the perfect-grade perfected Lord dermic weapon into two. Before the sword chi dissipated, Cheng Peng's arm was severed as well. Although Cheng Peng did not die and was lucky enough to survive, everyone could tell. Not only did that slash sever Cheng Peng's arm, it even shattered his Dao foundation. The sword chi surged into Cheng Peng's body through the wound and cut his meridians into pieces. Cheng Peng was crippled. The crowd was shocked. A paragon of phenomenon ranking 15 was crippled with a single move. The way everyone looked at Su Zimo changed gradually. Even Nangong Ling and the other two were dumbfounded and could not recover for a moment. Although they had seen Su Zimo attack before, the feeling he gave them back then was far less shocking than this. He was a rank 15 paragon of the phenomenon ranking. He was crippled by Little Uncle Master with such a casual sword chi. Even Su Zimo, the one who attacked, was shocked, let alone the others. He was prepared to establish his might in front of everyone and intimidate some cultivators who were hiding in the dark with this attack to begin with. However, he truly did not expect the heaven-slaying sword art to possess such might. Moreover, what he had comprehended was merely the tip of the iceberg. It was merely the tip of the iceberg of the sword art that crippled a paragon. Chapter 9:12, Assassination. Chapter 9:12, Assassination. After a brief silence, there was an uproar. Thud, thud, thud. A few Heavenly Dipper Sect disciples who were initially following behind Cheng Peng ran over hurriedly and helped him up. All of them glared at Su Zimo, but none of them dared to step forward with fearful expressions. If even Cheng Peng was reduced to such a state by the sword chi, which of them could defend against it? Hurry, let's go. There was no color on Cheng Peng's face as he panted heavily. Return to the sect and report this matter. The Heavenly Dipper Sect disciples did not hesitate and supported Cheng Peng as they left the Immortal welcoming restaurant. They summoned a cloud and sped into the distance. Who is that? Judging from his robes, he doesn't seem to be a 100 refinement sect cultivator? It must be a cultivator from Sword Sect. That's right. The only person who can cultivate such a terrifying sword chi is probably the successor of the Sword Sect. However, he looks unfamiliar. I've never seen him before. Could he be a paragon that has risen recently? The cultivators discussed and pointed. Nangong Ling could clearly sense that some of the powerful auras that were initially approaching had stopped in their tracks, as though they were stunned by the scene earlier on. Go, let's leave this place. Putting away the heaven-slaying sword art into his robes, Su Zimo leaped into the air and arrived at the long street instantly. Nangong Ling and the other two followed hurriedly. Many cultivators who were watching from beneath the restaurant dispersed and looked at Su Zimo with curious, respectful and hostile gazes. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he strode forward. Nangong Ling and the other two only regained their senses after they had walked far away. Ru Xin ran a few steps forward excitedly. Little Uncle Master, that sword strike of yours was way too cool. What is it called? Can you impart it to me? Even Nangong Ling could not hold back his curiosity and asked with a voice transmission, Little Uncle Master, have you cultivated in the sword sect before? Su Zimo did not reply and merely strode forward in haste. This time round, Nangong Ling was not angry. After that incident, he viewed Su Zimo with more respect. Not everyone could cripple a paragon on the phenomenon ranking with a single sword chi. Little Uncle Master, don't walk so quickly. Ru Xin was excited and there was no fear in her eyes. She skipped along behind Su Zimo and sent a voice transmission. Little Uncle Master, what do we have to fear if you know such a sword technique? In this Wind Cloud City we can do whatever we want. Little Uncle Master, don't worry. We're cultivators of 100 Refinement Sect after all. Void reversions will definitely not attack and bully us with their higher cultivation realms. If a nascent soul doesn't know what's good for them and wants to snatch the lava crystal, move your fingers and send a sword chi over. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The more she spoke, the more excited she became and she even gestured with her hands. Suddenly Su Zimo said, that sword chi consumes a lot of mental energy. I can only release it once in a short period of time. Su Zimo was not bluffing. The heaven-slaying sword art was one of the 3 great ancient sword arts. Even though Su Zimo had only comprehended the basics, it was already an overload for him to release that sword chi with his nascent soul realm cultivation. If not for the fact that his essence spirit was far superior to his peers, he would have been injured by the sword chi before he could release it. When she heard Su Zimo's reply, Ru Xin wilted and did not dare to speak any more. Of course, Su Zimo was not worried about those who were after the lava crystal. Instead, he was worried about some existences hidden in the darkness. Su Zimo had a feeling that they were targeted by an even more terrifying enemy. They had to leave this place as soon as possible. Whoa, are you trying to escape after obtaining a great treasure? Fufu, I heard that you guys obtained a lava crystal. Unfortunately, I need that stone as well. Suddenly, an eccentric voice sounded from the crowd. Who's hiding? Nangong Ling's gaze was bright as he hollered and surveyed his surroundings. The crowd retreated. However, Nangong Ling could not find the person that provoked them. It seemed as though it could be anybody. Fufu, as expected of the 83rd on the phenomenon ranking. How impressive. What's the use of showing off? He's just a piece of trash who needs protection. Hey, that green-robed sword cultivator, what's your relationship with those 300 Refinement Sect cultivators? Let me give you a piece of advice. It's best if you don't get involved with them. 100 Refinement Sect is about to be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. I reckon that it won't be long before it's destroyed as well, hee. The mocking voice sounded once more and it was still changing directions continuously. There was no way to determine the person's location. Nangong Ling and the other two were enraged when they heard that, but they could only worry. Initially, Su Zimo was on his way when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. In a flash, he leaped into the crowd beside him. Get the hell out. Su Zimo's gaze was electric as he extended his palm and spread his fingers, grabbing towards a cultivator in the middle of the crowd as though he wanted to blot out the sun. That person had an ordinary physique and appearance. There was nothing special about him. He was an existence that could be forgotten with a single glance. However, this ordinary cultivator had a cold glint in his eyes when he saw Su Zimo's attack. He let out a strange laugh. Fellow Taoist, you're quite skillful to be able to discover my tracks. That person did not fight Su Zimo head-on at all. He turned around and retreated at an extremely fast speed. Unfortunately, it's too late. That person said meaningfully. At the same time, an inconspicuous figure was rapidly approaching Nangong Ling and the other two on the other side of the crowd. The cultivator was expressionless and his eyes were calm. There was no killing intent at all. Narrowing his gaze, Su Zimo's bones rumbled and his outstretched arm expanded by 3 feet. Instantly, it descended on the head of the escaping cultivator and grabbed him viciously. Against Su Zimo's palm, that person's head was crushed like a piece of tofu and his essence spirit was destroyed, dying on the spot. When Nangong Ling and the other two saw that, they suddenly felt an unprecedented killing intent and their hearts shuddered. The next moment, the 3 of them caught sight of a sword beam. It was too fast. Unknowingly, an unassuming cultivator had appeared beside them. Out of nowhere, that person took out a slender soft sword and attacked. Without a doubt, this was an assassination attempt that could send despair down one's soul. This person's combat strength might not be able to match Nangong Ling. However, after that attack, Nangong Ling could only wait for death and watch helplessly as the sword brushed past his throat. He seemed to be able to see his throat being slit and spewing blood onto the long street. Hidden Death Sect, one of the 7 fiend sects. To be able to execute an assassination to such an extent without any loopholes and even shock one into such despair, this was something only achievable by Hidden Death Sect cultivators. It had to be said that the assassination was meticulously planned. First, someone lured Su Zimo away. Another person sneaked over and launched a fatal attack to kill and steal the treasure. The entire process was almost flawless. Unfortunately, they had truly underestimated a person. Just as the sword beam was about to slice Nangong Ling's throat, it suddenly dissipated. The sword was exposed. It was only inches away from Nangong Ling's throat and the sharpness of the sword even severed the hairs on his neck. At that moment, the sword froze in midair motionlessly. One end was clutched in the hands of the Hidden Death Sect cultivator. The other end was gripped by 2 slender fingers and did not budge at all. Chapter 9:13 You're worthy? Chapter 9:13 You're worthy? The Hidden Death Sect cultivator was stunned. In front of him stood a man in green robes, expressionless with a sharp gaze. The latter was glaring at him with a cold killing intent. The sword in his hand was caught between 2 fingers of the green-robed man and could not move at all. Little Uncle Master. Nangong Ling almost shrieked after that close brush with death. Su Zimo was decisive in killing. After killing one of the Hidden Death Sect cultivators, he turned back swiftly and blocked the killing blow of another assassin. It was too fast. They were on completely different levels. Not many people could see Su Zimo's movement technique clearly. Everyone felt their vision blur and thereafter, Su Zimo had already returned and gripped the Hidden Death Sect cultivator's sword between 2 fingers. Hidden Death Sect specialized in concealment and assassination. Hidden Death Sect cultivators were particular about killing in a single strike. If they missed their attacks they would flee 1,000 miles away. They were not good at fighting head-on. However, Su Zimo's current body was comparable to perfect-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapons. His physical strength was not something that any Hidden Death Sect cultivator could match. Even the fiend heir of Hidden Death Sect would be killed on the spot, let alone an ordinary cultivator of Hidden Death Sect. Su Zimo had already decided to establish his dominance and naturally would not hold back. A cold glint flashed through his eyes as he channeled strength into his fingers. Clang. The cold sword was snapped by 2 fingers and the tip of the sword flew backwards, entering the glabella of the Hidden Death Sect cultivator. With a flash of blood, the essence spirit of Hidden Death Sect's cultivator was also shattered by the sword fragment and died on the spot. Instantly, 2 nascent souls died on the streets. The way many cultivators looked at Su Zimo changed gradually. Standing on the spot, Su Zimo gave off a shuddering aura. It was the stench of blood. The blood stench that was accumulated after killing countless paragons and stepping on the corpses of countless monster incarnates. Initially, Su Zimo did not want to attract attention and his aura was restrained. But now, he had to break through all obstacles with lightning speed and leave the city as soon as possible to bring Nangong Ling and the other 2 back to the sect. Su Zimo swept his gaze and those who harbored evil intentions retreated, not daring to meet his gaze. This was pressure. It was a pressure that came from the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking. Su Zimo strode forward in huge steps. The crowd dispersed and cleared a path. Nangong Ling and the other 2 followed hurriedly. Along the way many people were indeed shocked because Qing Peng was crippled and 2 nascent souls of Hidden Death Sect were killed. Some cultivators who wanted to snatch the lava crystal had to consider whether they could compare to Qing Peng. Not far away, many cultivators were clustered around a nascent soul. He was elegant and handsome, looking over with a smile. It was Soaring Feather Sect's Wu Tianyu, who was ranked 11 on the phenomenon ranking. "Senior brother, should we attack?" A Soaring Feather Sect cultivator asked softly. Wu Tianyu glanced sideways at that person and asked, "Can you stop that green-robed cultivator?" "I can't." "Senior brother, you can definitely do it." The cultivator murmured. Wu Tianyu shook his head and said indifferently, "This person is unfathomable and I'm not confident either. The Middle Continent is truly filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Cheng Peng's defeat is not unjustified." The moment he said that, Wu Tianyu's gaze shifted as he looked at the group of cultivators at the city gate. The corners of his lips curled as he murmured softly, "Interesting." Under the gazes of many cultivators, Su Zimo's group traveled and arrived at the city gate before long. There were more than 10 cultivators standing in front. Every single cultivator had a cold expression and stood in front of the long street with swords on their backs. It was clear that they had no intention of giving way. When Nangong Ling saw the leader, his expression changed and he exclaimed softly, "Jian Wuzong." Sword Sect's Jian Wuzong, third on the phenomenon ranking. Ru Xian stuck out her tongue and sent a voice transmission secretly, "Oh no, Jian Wuzong seems like he's going to attack. Little Uncle Master's sword chi has just been released and he can't attack anymore. What should we do?" "Even if Little Uncle Master can release that sword technique, it's useless. Don't forget, Jian Wuzong has cultivated the All Swords United phenomenon and every sword in the world will submit to it." Nangong Ling said with an anxious expression, "All sword cultivators will lose their combat strength in the face of Jian Wuzong. Little Uncle Master can't avoid it either." Lu Hanyan murmured, "I hope Jian Wuzong doesn't target us." Pausing for a moment, Lu Hanyan hesitated for a moment before making a decision. "If he wants to fight for the lava crystal, I'll give it to him." Nangong Ling and Ru Xian did not speak. In the face of the third on the phenomenon ranking, they felt a sense of helplessness and could only submit. This was an absolute suppression of combat strength. Furthermore, most sword cultivators were bloodthirsty people. If Little Uncle Master and them were implicated because of the lava crystal, it would be too late for regrets. Right then, Su Zimo had already walked forward and said, "Move." Nangong Ling and the other two felt their hearts skip a beat. How many nascent soul cultivators would dare to speak to Jian Wuzong in such a manner? Jian Wuzong raised his long brows and killing intent surged in his eyes, exuding a chilling aura that he had no intention of hiding. Nangong Ling hurried forward and tugged at Su Zimo's sleeves, sending a voice transmission, "Little Uncle Master, don't be rash. You're a sword cultivator and you can't defeat him." After what happened earlier on, Nangong Ling's attitude towards Su Zimo had changed. With a worried expression, Lu Hanyan sent a voice transmission as well, "Uncle Master, if worst comes to worst, we can just give this stone to them. There's no need for us to fight with them." It was extremely dangerous to fight against sword cultivators. Sword cultivators cultivated the Tao of killing, and as long as they unsheathed their swords, blood would definitely be spilled. Su Zimo was indifferent and continued to look at Jian Wuzong with a domineering aura. Jian Wuzong grinned. "You're not from Sword Sect." Initially, all the cultivators in Wind Cloud City thought that Su Zimo was the successor of Sword Sect. It was only now that everyone realized what was going on. "Since you're not a successor of Sword Sect, why aren't you bowing to me?" Jian Wuzong changed the topic. "Why should I?" Su Zimo asked indifferently. "Haha." Jian Wuzong reared his head in laughter and declared proudly, "Sword Sect is the place of pilgrimage for all sword cultivators in the world. I'm the most outstanding successor of the Sword Sect, so you're disrespecting the Sword Sect by not paying your respects to me. If you disrespect Sword Sect, it means that you wish to die." Many cultivators shook their heads when they heard that. This man is doomed. He's courting death for provoking Jian Wuzong. He was too proud for refusing to pay respects to Sword Sect and hold himself back in front of Jian Wuzong. He deserves it if he dies here. Nangong Ling and the other two were anxious but did not know how to persuade him. Right then, Jian Wuzong continued, "However, I can give you a chance on account of how hard you must have cultivated to get to this point. As long as you're willing to follow me, I'll spare your life." This is a huge opportunity. To think that there would be light at the end of the tunnel. To be able to follow Jian Wuzong means that he has a chance to join the Sword Sect. This person is truly lucky. Everyone was filled with emotions. Right then, everyone heard a scoff filled with mockery. You think you're worthy of me following you? Chapter 9:14, Beaten so badly the sword can't be withdrawn. Chapter 9:14, Beaten so badly the sword can't be withdrawn. The moment he said that, everyone present was shocked. Disdain. Extreme disdain. Many cultivators looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at a dead man. Jian Wuzong's eyes were first filled with rage. However, he suddenly laughed and nodded repeatedly at Su Zimo thereafter. Very good, this is the edge that a sword cultivator should have. The more that is the case, the more I admire you. At that moment, Jian Wuzong did not realize who he was talking to. Or rather, none of the cultivators in Wind Cloud City knew the true identity of the green-robed man. In Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo could fight against mid-level fiend demons head-on. Mid-level fiend demons were equivalent to void reversions of the cultivation world. Although Jian Wuzong was third on the phenomenon ranking, he was still a nascent soul. Furthermore, the phenomenon ranking had just ended and his cultivation realm was only at early-stage nascent soul. Notwithstanding the fact that Su Zimo was already at peak late-stage nascent soul. Even if this was 100 years ago when Su Zimo had just entered nascent soul realm, he could suppress Jian Wuzong with ease. Jian Wuzong said slowly, "How about this? Let's spar. If you can take 3 of my sword strikes, I'll let you guys leave this place." Pausing for a moment, Jian Wuzong continued, "If you can't take it, you will have to follow me obediently and not go against my will in the future. Do you dare to take the gamble? 3 sword strikes is enough." That's right. Given Jian Wuzong's combat strength, even number 4 of the phenomenon ranking might not be able to take 3 of his strikes if he were to attack with his full strength. That green-robed cultivator will definitely lose. Everyone viewed themselves as objective bystanders and discussed. The Soaring Feather Sect cultivator looked at the man beside him and asked softly, "Senior brother, what do you think of this bet?" Jian Wuzong's sword is very fast. 3 strikes. Wu Tianyu shook his head slightly and said, "Among nascent souls, there are probably less than 10 who can receive his 3 strikes." Wu Tianyu and Jian Wuzong partook in the same phenomenon ranking and understood one another. His evaluation of Jian Wuzong was extremely high. The Soaring Feather Sect cultivator said, "If that's the case, that green-robed cultivator will definitely lose. The 10 people that senior brother mentioned are definitely the strongest experts in the nascent soul realm and are famous throughout the world. That person is clearly not among them." "Yes." Wu Tianyu said deeply, "It's hard to say. I have a feeling that this green-robed cultivator is unfathomable and far from simple." The Soaring Feather Sect cultivator was indifferent. "Senior brother, don't forget that he's a sword cultivator. Once they fight, he'll definitely be suppressed by Jian Wuzong. He won't win this gamble." On the long street, Nangong Ling, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian were worried and sent voice transmissions to Su Zimo, telling him not to accept the gamble. Once lost, their little uncle master would become someone else's lackey. Neither they nor the 100 Refinement Sect would be able to take it. Furthermore, Nangong Ling and the other 2 could not see any hope of Su Zimo winning. "So, do you dare to take the gamble?" Jian Wuzong asked and smiled with a confident expression. "Ha ha ha ha." Su Zimo reared his head in laughter. "Sure. However, there's no need for 3 strikes. If you can even draw your sword in front of me, it'll be my loss." Everyone was stunned the moment his sentence was finished. It was dead silent near the long street. Although his words were extremely arrogant, everyone could hear a sense of pride and awe in his tone. Who would dare say such words in front of Jian Wuzong? Would the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking this time round, Yi Tiancheng, dare to do so? Would the number 2 of the phenomenon ranking, Yan Mo, dare to do so? There were countless nascent souls in Tianhuang mainland. Who among them would dare? Yet someone dared to do so. "You." Jian Wuzong narrowed his eyes with a cold glint. This time round, he was truly enraged as he said with a frosty voice, "How dare you? Kill?" Before Jian Wuzong could finish, he was interrupted by Su Zimo's shout. Sound Domain Secret Skill, Thunderclap Kill. After cultivating the Purple Thunder Manual, Thunderclap Kill was even more powerful than before. The surrounding cultivators felt their bodies tremble and the ground quaked as gravel flew. One could imagine what sort of impact the Jian Wuzong had to endure. That shout was like a thunderbolt from the clear skies that exploded in Jian Wuzong's ears, causing his ears to buzz and his scalp to tingle. However, for Jian Wuzong to be able to reach third on the phenomenon ranking, he was definitely not someone easy to deal with. He was experienced in combat and realized right away that Su Zimo had released a sound domain secret skill. Clang. Clang. Jian Wuzong circulated his blood qi and the sound of sword qi clanging echoed from his body. Among the super sects of Tianhuang mainland, some body-tempering sects, such as Glass Palace, Overlord Palace and Diamond Monastery, were extremely famous. In reality, Sword Sect's body-tempering technique was extremely strong as well. The process of tempering the body by tearing it with sword qi and repairing it continuously caused the body's blood qi to become extremely powerful and sharp. When cultivators of Sword Sect cultivated their bodies to their limits, their blood qi would be mixed with sword qi. Their fingers were like swords that could slice apart divine weapons with a single wave. Jian Wuzong channeled his blood qi and had just gotten rid of the negative effects of Thunderclap Kill when he felt his vision blur as a green figure crushed over. You must have a death wish. With a sneer, Jian Wuzong reached for the sword on his shoulder. He was all too familiar with that action. It could be said that the first sword technique he practiced after joining the Sword Sect was how to draw his sword. Even in his dreams, even in his sixth senses, Jian Wuzong could draw his sword right away. This had already become his instinct. However, his sword was pushed back by a pair of hands halfway through its withdrawal. Buzz. The sword hum had just sounded when it stopped. The sword was already sheathed. He was fast. However, Su Zimo was even faster. The green shadow flickered and Su Zimo was already close to him. Bang, bang, bang. Helpless, Jian Wuzong could only fight Su Zimo barehanded. However, right after, Jian Wuzong's expression changed drastically and he almost could not help but cry out in pain. Su Zimo's body was way too strong. Jian Wuzong's fists and palms felt as though they were striking cold and hard rocks. After 2 or 3 moves, his hands were already purple and bruised. At that distance, Jian Wuzong did not even have the chance to form a dermic art. Su Zimo's attacks rained down in a flurry and were suffocating. Jian Wuzong grit his teeth and his eyes were bloodshot. He ignored Su Zimo's incoming palm and pulled out the sword on his shoulder, prepared to fight to the death. However, Su Zimo's palm swiped across his chest before he strode forward and slapped his shoulder. Clang. The moment the sword was unsheathed, Su Zimo slapped it back. You. Jian Wuzong was so angry that his body was trembling but he was helpless. He retreated continuously, wanting to increase the distance between them and draw his sword. However, Su Zimo was closing in on him like a maggot, not giving him any chance at all. In the blink of an eye, both parties had exchanged dozens of blows. During this period of time, Jian Wuzong tried to pull out his sword multiple times but was blocked by Su Zimo. As for his own hands and arms, they were already swollen and almost ruptured after colliding with Su Zimo. Despair. Jian Wuzong's heart was filled with nothing but despair. There was no chance to retaliate at all. If this continued, his bones would be shattered before he could draw his sword. He had never been reduced to such a state and lost so thoroughly in a fight. Suppression. Complete suppression. He was beaten so badly he could not withdraw his sword at all. Chapter 9:15, Train for 500 years more. Chapter 9:15. Train for 500 years more. It was forceful. It was shocking. Third on the phenomenon ranking, Jian Wuzong, the most outstanding successor of Sword Sect, could not even draw his sword in a fight. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely cause an uproar. Nangong Ling's mind was in a mess. If he had not witnessed it personally, he truly could not imagine that Jian Wuzong would be defeated so thoroughly. Under normal circumstances, any sword cultivator would be suppressed by the all swords united phenomenon that Jian Wuzong cultivated. However, this battle seemed to be the opposite. In front of little Uncle Master, Jian Wuzong was like a child who was beaten up senselessly without the ability to even withdraw his sword. What a strong physique and melee combat capabilities. Wu Tianyu looked at the two people fighting on the long street and murmured softly. On the long street, Jian Wuzong retreated continuously. There was no longer any pride and composure on his face. Instead, it was replaced with panic. He was completely helpless. Jian Wuzong was defeated. Many cultivators watched in disbelief. Although the phenomenon ranking was a ranking for the strength of golden cores, Cultivators that could be ranked on the ranking should not be too weak after entering nascent soul realm. No one expected Jian Wuzong, the third on the phenomenon ranking, to lose to an unknown green-robed cultivator. Furthermore, as a sword cultivator, he had not released his sword the entire time. This was a humiliation for sword cultivators. Thief, don't be cocky. Save senior brother. The dozens of sword sect cultivators watching from the sidelines could no longer care about anything else and attacked when they saw Jian Wuzong in such a state. Streaks of sword light shone resplendently as sword chi rampaged with a sharp edge, forming an impenetrable sword net that enveloped Su Zimo. What are you guys doing? Don't you have any shame bullying in numbers? Ru Xian could not help but shout. Without hesitation, Nangong Ling and Lu Hanyan summoned their dermic weapons and formed hand seals right away, prepared to help Su Zimo. Clang. Right then, the sound of a sword being unsheathed echoed through the world. An incomparably stunning sword beam appeared on the long street. It was white and blinding as it tore through the void. The sword on his Jian Wuzong's back was pulled out. The sword was long and sharp with a chilling aura. 6 dermic patterns shone on its body in a blinding manner. It was a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. It was only normal for someone ranked third on the phenomenon ranking and the successor of Sword Sect to possess a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. The dermic sword had a strong background and was known as the startling dermic sword. It was Jian Wuzong's destiny dermic weapon and was also his prize as the third of the phenomenon ranking. The cultivators were moved. To think that the sword would be unsheathed at the final moment. Everyone knew that sword cultivators were on completely different levels when they wielded their swords in bare hands. If Jian Wuzong wields his sword, that green-robed man will be in danger. Yes, Jian Wuzong's swordsmanship is sharp and he possesses the legacy of Sword Sect. Something isn't right. The person's eyes widened and he suddenly could not continue. Many cultivators noticed something amiss as well. Nangong Ling looked over and could not help but feel shocked as disbelief surged in his eyes. The startling dermic sword was not in Jian Wuzong's hands at all. However, it was in Little Uncle Master's hands. The person who pulled out the startling dermic sword was not Jian Wuzong but Su Zimo. Not only did Su Zimo wallop Jian Wuzong till the latter could not withdraw his sword, he even snatched away the latter's sword. Right then, the net of sword chi released by the dozens of sword cultivators from Sword Sect had already descended. The cold chi was bone-piercing as though it was slicing the void into pieces. Wielding the startling sword, Su Zimo roared and slashed with his backhand. Bang! Boom! Boom! The sword actually produced the sound of tsunamis. Su Zimo slashed out the intent of raging tides from the sea calming manual with his sword. Dermic powers surged in midair and the sword beam was piercingly cold, as though it was a tsunami that collided heavily against the sword net. Instantly, the dozens of sword cultivators had an illusion that they were in a raging sea and could be drowned at any moment. They were not the only ones. Even the surrounding cultivators felt as though they were in the middle of a tsunami, swaying and spinning. In the deep and turbulent ocean, every cultivator felt incomparably tiny. This was the true power of heaven and earth. Wu Tianyu closed his eyes hurriedly and calmed his mind repeatedly to condense his essence spirit. That feeling gradually dissipated. What a strong sword intent. The soaring feather sect cultivator at the side was shocked and his face was pale. Wu Tianyu opened his eyes slowly and frowned slightly. With a strange expression he murmured softly, "Sword intent, ha." For some unknown reason he felt that the sword intent was a little strange. It was as though it lacked some of the sharpness of the sword Dao and was instead thicker. Clang! Clang! The sound of metal clashing echoed through the battlefield. The sword net shattered. All the sword lights dissipated in an instant and the world returned to peace. Nangong Ling and Lu Hanyan stopped in their tracks and quietly dispersed their hand seals. That was because it was no longer necessary. Victory was decided with a single slash. More than 10 sword cultivators fell to the ground not far away with grim expressions. The swords in their hands were all broken and their tips were scattered all over the ground. Some of the sword cultivators had their perlicues ruptured and fresh blood flowed. Their swords were all thrown to the side as they were unable to maintain their grips on the swords any longer. The grades of those swords were not low either. They were either superior grade or supreme grade dermic weapons. But now they were all crippled and reduced to scrap metal. The entire process seemed simple and was merely a single slash. However, Su Zimo's powerful physique, coupled with his connate startling dermic sword and his powerful saber intent was the reason why he could achieve such an effect. The tall figure was the only one left standing on the long street. His black hair fluttered and he wore an upright green robe. He wielded a long sword with an indifferent expression. Su Zimo raised the sword in his hand and flicked it gently. The sword quivered and let out a hum that was clear and resounding. "Good sword." Su Zimo praised and said unquestionably, "It's mine now." As he said that, he kept the startling dermic sword in his storage bag and headed out of the city. Nangong Ling and the other two were stunned for a moment before following hurriedly. This time round, no one in Wind Cloud City dared to stand in Su Zimo's way. Jian Wuzong had an indignant expression as he looked at Su Zimo's back view. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Do you dare to return the startling dermic sword to me? Let's fight again. As long as I have the sword, I—" Before Jian Wuzong could finish his sentence, his clothes exploded into pieces that scattered on the ground. Bust. The next moment, a commotion broke out among the crowd. "What are you guys doing?" Jian Wuzong surveyed his surroundings and realized that all the cultivators were staring at him with complicated gazes containing shock, surprise, pity and mockery. "What are you guys looking at?" Jian Wuzong roared again with bloodshot eyes and a menacing expression. "Senior brother, your chest." One of the Sword Sect cultivators pointed at Jian Wuzong's chest with a trembling voice and a horrified expression. Jian Wuzong lowered his head. Unknowingly, his chest was slashed by something and he was drenched in blood. There were 6 words written in blood: "Train for 500 years more." Jian Wuzong felt chills run down his spine and his limbs went cold. Those words must have been written on his chest by the green-robed man during their fight earlier on. This meant that he would have died countless times if the green-robed man wanted to kill him. However, those words were even worse than killing him. Every word struck his heart. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Jian Wuzong was enraged from the blow and spat out a mouthful of blood before fainting on the spot. Chapter 9:16 Danger Arrives. Chapter 9:16 Danger Arrives. 100 Refinement Sect. Dao Lord Scarlet Star arrived at the Great Hall of 100 Refinement Sect in a hurry and bumped into a middle-aged cultivator with 3 whiskers who was exiting. That person had a steady bearing and there was a hint of dignity in his eyes. It was clear that he had been in a high position for a long time. "Greetings, Sect Master." The 2 cultivators at the entrance bowed to the man. It was the Sect Master of 100 Refinement Sect, Dao Lord White Flames. Senior Brother White Flames. When Dao Lord Scarlet Star saw that person, he hurried forward to greet him. When Dao Lord White Flames saw his anxious expression, he asked in a deep voice, "What's wrong?" Frowning, Dao Lord Scarlet Star said hatefully, "My 3 good-for-nothing disciples snuck out and haven't returned for a day." Dao Lord White Flames's expression changed slightly. This period was extremely sensitive and 100 Refinement Sect was in a precarious situation. To be fair, if Dao Lord Extreme Fire had not returned in time, none of them knew how they would have survived this ordeal. As for the 3 disciples of Dao Lord Scarlet Star, Lu Hanyin was going to take part in the weapon refinement contest for the 1,000 Crane Tea Party in a month's time. Nothing must go wrong. It was truly dangerous for Lu Hanyin and the other 2 to leave the sect at a time like this. "Do you know where they went?" Dao Lord White Flames asked with a calm expression. "They seem to have gone to Wind Cloud City." Dao Lord Scarlet Star was enraged as he grit his teeth. "Those 3 brats are truly worrisome. I told them to stay in the sect but they refused to listen. If anything happens..." He could not continue and was both angry and anxious. "Don't panic first." Dao Lord White Flames said in a deep voice, "Cultivators from the various major sects and factions of the Middle Continent are gathered in Wind Cloud City and they're all from the righteous path. There shouldn't be anyone harming them. Furthermore, Wind Cloud City isn't too far from the sect. They shouldn't be in much danger." Dao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. "I'm not worried about the orthodox cultivators, I'm worried about Hellfire Hall." Ah. Even someone with Dao Lord White Flames's temperament could not help but exclaim when he heard about Hellfire Hall. Instantly, his expression darkened. Dao Lord Scarlet Star said, "As you know, the Hall Master of Hellfire Palace has always wanted to obtain the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. Nangong Ling and the other 2 are the easiest targets for them to target. Furthermore, there's no way that Hellfire Hall would let things go after suffering that huge setback from us previously. Right then, a voice sounded in their minds. Apart from the three of them, who else is there? Upon hearing that voice, both of them shuddered. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was using his spirit consciousness to ask them. Tao Lord Scarlet Star added hurriedly, there's also Mo Ling. A cultivator of the sect saw him going along with them. Yes, that's all right. There might be hope for them. Tao Lord Extreme Fire pondered deeply. Tao Lord Scarlet Star pursed his lips in disapproval. In his opinion, although Mo Ling's seniority was high, he was merely a 100-year-old nascent soul. How strong could he be? It did not matter if he was there or not. Hellfire Hall had already failed once. If they wanted to lay their hands on Nangong Ling and the other two, they might send void reversions. At that time, what use would Mo Ling be? Was he going to use seniority to scare his opponents to death? In reality, Tao Lord Scarlet Star had underestimated the determination of Hellfire Hall. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said, hurry and send experts of the sect to Wind Cloud City to look for them and bring them back to the sect. Alright, I'll instruct my void reversion disciples. Tao Lord White Flames conjured hand seals and prepared to summon his disciples. No. Tao Lord Extreme Fire denied immediately. Scarlet Star, put down what you're doing and make a trip personally. You're at the Dharma characteristic realm and you're fast. If anything happens, you'll be able to suppress it. Upon hearing that, Tao Lord Scarlet Star's heart skipped a beat. He vaguely realized that things might be more serious than he had imagined. Alright, I'll go right away. Without hesitation, Tao Lord Scarlet Star tore through the air in the direction of Wind Cloud City and disappeared from 100 Refinement Sect. I hope nothing will happen. Tao Lord White Flames looked into the distance and murmured softly. At the same time, Su Zimo's group of 4 had already left Wind Cloud City and were speeding towards 100 Refinement Sect on their spirit vessel. This time round, Su Zimo was the one steering the spirit vessel and channeling his dermic powers with all his might, pushing it to its limits with lightning speed. Nangong Ling and the other two had yet to notice what was happening. They were still excited as they discussed the battle in Wind Cloud City. However, Su Zimo knew that the sense of danger that surrounded him did not disappear. Instead, it intensified. Little Uncle Master, although you weren't famous in the past, this battle is enough to make you famous. Ru Xian said gleefully, Little Uncle Master, don't worry. Once we return to the sect, I'll definitely spread the news for you so that you can show off properly. Lu Hanyin smiled without saying anything. Nangong Ling's gaze towards Su Zimo had changed as well. There was no longer any hostility. Instead, it was replaced with curiosity, admiration and respect. Little Uncle Master, you're a sword cultivator but you don't seem to be suppressed in your fight with Jian Wuzong. What's with that? Nangong Ling leaned over and asked humbly. With a grim expression, Su Zimo released his spirit consciousness and stared at the thick darkness ahead in silence. It was not that he did not want to answer. However, his attention was entirely focused on checking out his surroundings and preparing to deal with any incoming danger. He truly did not hear Nangong Ling's question. If it was in the past, Nangong Ling would have been enraged and mocked him right away. However, this time round, Nangong Ling merely smiled embarrassedly and scratched his head before asking, Little Uncle Master, who is your master? Is he also a sword cultivator? Is there such a powerful sword cultivator among the seniors of 100 Refinement Sect? Su Zimo had once crippled Cheng Peng with a single sword chi. At the city gate, his sword created a powerful intent realm and severed the swords of more than 10 sword cultivators. Therefore, it was not only Nangong Ling. Even the cultivators of Wind Cloud City mistook Su Zimo for a sword cultivator. Su Zimo did not reply. Instead, he frowned and looked even more grim in the dark night. Little Uncle Master, what are you doing? Ru Xian came over as well and asked curiously, We've already left Wind Cloud City and there's no danger. Why are you in such a hurry to return? Little Uncle Master, come over and talk to us. Ru Xian shook Su Zimo's arm gently and said coquettishly. Lu Hanyin, who was silent at the side, finally noticed something amiss and asked softly, Uncle Master, is there any danger? Right then, Su Zimo finally spoke, If anything happens later on, escape immediately. Don't worry about me. Nangong Ling and the other two were slightly stunned and looked lost. Even though they were chatting along the way, they released their spirit consciousnesses to check out their surroundings and did not discover any danger. He. Right then, A sinister laughter sounded in the air that sent chills down one's spine. Little child, your senses are sure sharp to be able to detect me. However, the three of them can't escape and neither can you. Chapter 9:17 Demon. Chapter 9:17, Demon. The moment that voice sounded, the expressions of Nangong Ling and the other two changed. Nangong Ling clenched his fists and grit his teeth. The people of Wind Cloud City are truly relentless. They actually chased us all the way here. Lu Hanyan withdrew a black stone from her storage bag and declared, "We don't want this lava crystal anymore. If you guys want it, feel free to take it." Nangong Ling and the other two did not realize who their opponents were. Su Zimo stood up and said indifferently, "They don't want the stone. Keep it." Tisk tsk. Kit, you're the smartest. The sinister voice sounded once more. "Initially, I intended to kill you along the way and capture the three of them. But now it seems like you have quite a few secrets on you as well. Hehe, I can't bear to lose them." Nangong Ling and the other two exchanged glances and seemed to have realized something, looking flustered. "Who are you?" Nangong Ling took a deep breath and asked again. The moment he said that, 7 figures appeared in the surrounding darkness and surrounded their spirit vessel in 7 directions. The 7 of them looked at Su Zimo's group of 4 coldly. Some of them had mocking, teasing gazes and some of them were filled with killing intent. The 7 of them wore the same attire and there was a dark flame tattooed on their sleeves. It was eerie. Hellfire Hall. The expressions of Nangong Ling and the other two turned extremely terrible as well. The enmity between Hellfire Hall and 100 Refinement Sect was irreconcilable. They knew very well that they would not have a good ending if they were to fall into the hands of Hellfire Hall. It was only when their spirit consciousnesses swept past the 7 cultivators of Hellfire Hall that their hearts sank and their limbs turned cold. Void reversions. All 7 of them were void reversions. The difference between them was a major cultivation realm. Even 1 void reversion was enough to kill them, let alone 7 of them. At void reversion realm, one's essence spirit would not be afraid of the strong winds or the scorching sun. However, the dermic powers that could be controlled by one's spirit would be even thicker and more boundless. What was even more frightening was that the essence spirit of a void reversion was so strong that he could already launch spirit consciousness attacks. Nascent souls could not withstand a spirit consciousness attack. This was a suppression of a major cultivation realm. Ru Xian was furious and her face was pale from fright. However, she mustered her courage and shouted, "Why you guys from Hellfire Hall? How dare you send us 7 void reversions to deal with us 4 nascent souls? You're as shameless and immoral." At the end of her sentence, Ru Xian's voice turned softer and softer and she lost her aura. Hellfire Hall was a group of unscrupulous cultivators to begin with. There was no morality to speak of with them. Foo-foo. The 7 void reversions of Hellfire Hall stood around with their arms crossed and sneers in their eyes. Right from the beginning, Su Zimo did not say anything. He did not attack either. If there were only 7 void reversions, he had an 80% chance of killing all 7 of them with his trump cards. The real reason why Su Zimo did not make a move was because there was still someone from Hellfire Hall who had yet to appear. This was the true trump card of Hellfire Palace. Su Zimo stared at the dark night ahead and pursed his lips without saying anything. Before long, a figure walked out slowly in the night. The intruder's body was hunched and he supported himself with a walking stick. His beard and hair were white and he staggered as though he could die at any moment. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and suppressed his killing intent once more. Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. Although the intruder was on the brink of death, the aura he gave off was definitely unique to Dharma characteristic experts. Su Zimo had cultivated 2 unprecedented essence spirits and had the ability to kill those at a higher cultivation realm. However, the difference of 2 major realms was like a huge chasm that he could not cross. The power of a Dharma characteristic was way too terrifying and he could not withstand it. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo had used all his trump cards. He had activated his Dragonification and used the Divine Phoenix Bone to injure the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak by surprise. Despite that, he was almost killed by a single palm strike. It was clear how terrifying Dharma characteristic Tao Lords were. Later on, if Tao Lord Extreme Fire had not appeared, he would have been killed by the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. Even though the old man looked old and was in his twilight years, Su Zimo did not dare to act rashly. If he was alone he would have many choices. The safest way was to catch them off guard and make use of blood escape to break out of the encirclement and flee far away. When he released the blood escape art with all his might, even with the overlord of levitating goat peak strength, the latter could barely keep up and only managed to maintain the distance. The Dharma characteristic old man before him looked like he was at the end of his life and his blood chi was weak. There was no way he could catch up to Su Zimo. But now Su Zimo had Nangong Ling and the other two beside him. He could not abandon the three of them and escape alone. Or perhaps, Su Zimo could choose to use the divine phoenix bone and attempt to fight the old man head-on. However, there was also immense danger involved. Given Su Zimo's strength, he could not activate the divine phoenix bone on his own accord. He had to rely on his opponent. Even if he could successfully activate the divine phoenix bone, he might not be able to kill the old man before him. The uncertainty was way too great. If he could not kill them in one strike, he and Nangong Ling would not be able to escape death. As his thoughts raced, Su Zimo's gaze flickered and he calmed down. He retracted his killing intent and continued waiting for an opportunity. The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer he had to be. Compared to Su Zimo, although Nangong Ling and the other two were older, they were flustered and did not know what to do. Nangong Ling and the other two could detect the cultivation realms of the 7 void reversions around them, but they could not detect the old man's cultivation. What did that mean? The intruder was a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. While Su Zimo was thinking of countermeasures, the minds of Nangong Ling and the other two were already in chaos. If the 7 void reversions made the three of them feel that their chances of survival were slim. The appearance of the Dharma characteristic Tao Lord left them in despair. In front of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords, nascent souls were like mortals before golden cores. They had no chance at all. Lu Hanyin laughed self-deprecatingly. To think that the three of us juniors are worthy of a personal visit from a Dharma characteristic of Hellfire Hall. The three of you are naturally not worthy. The old man grinned and the wrinkles on his face were already stacked. However, the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra in your possession is worth it. Nangong Ling and the other two felt their hearts turn cold. The old man continued, after capturing you guys, 100 Refinement Sect will definitely lose in the weapon refinement competition a month later. After I squeeze everything out of you, I might even be able to use you 3 brats to lure out your master. Don't you think it's worth it to have a strategy that kills 3 birds with 1 stone? TSK. Nangong Ling and the other two were ashen when they heard that. There was only a single thought in the minds of Nangong Ling and the other two. Commit suicide. Right then, a tremendous might descended and Nangong Ling and the other two felt like they could not move at all. They could not even send their essence spirits out. The old man said coldly, "You'll only die if you fall into my hands. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to commit suicide." Demon? You're a demon. Ruxian broke down completely and cried loudly. Nangong Ling and Lu Hanyin were also scared out of their wits as their bodies trembled. Chapter 9:18 Waiting for an Opportunity. Chapter 9:18 Waiting for an Opportunity. Su Zimo was the only one who could remain calm on the spirit vessel. Su Zimo had fought his way through and was invincible among his peers. He had never tasted defeat and had already accumulated an invincible aura. As such, his mental state was tough and unshakable. Furthermore, back when he was fighting for the heaven-slaying sword art in Thousand Demon Valley, he had fought against many overlords and 3 top Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was the one that borrowed his body for the short clash at that time. However, with that experience, Su Zimo would not panic when facing a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. Nangong Ling and the other two had lived for more than 200 years but had never experienced something like this. In the face of a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord, they felt despair and were stunned by the words of the old man from Hellfire Hall. The 3 of them were panicking and had completely broken down. The old man from Hellfire Hall narrowed his eyes and chuckled when he saw Su Zimo on the spirit vessel. "Kid, you've only lived for a little more than 100 years. It's truly rare for you to have such a temperament." The old man from Hellfire Hall laughed weirdly and changed the topic. "The reason why you're so calm is because you're waiting for the experts of 100 Refinement Sect to come and save you, right?" Su Zimo was silent. He believed that 100 Refinement Sect would definitely be alerted if the 4 of them had not returned for a day. Perhaps, experts of the sect were already on the way to save them. The old man from Hellfire Hall grinned. "I might as well tell you that it's too late even if 100 Refinement Sect manages to react. Nangong Ling and the other two looked despondent. It was as though everything was within the control of the old man from Hellfire Hall and they had no chance of escaping. Lu Hanyin and Ru Xian could not move at all. They could only cry silently as their bodies trembled. Old man, you don't look like you have much time left either. You don't have much lifespan left and you're nearing the end of it. Su Zimo looked at the old man of Hellfire Hall and sneered, Fufu, even if we die, how long can you live for? 30 years? 100 years? When he heard Su Zimo's sneer, Nangong Ling glanced sideways and thought to himself, little Uncle Master is truly fearless. Even at this point he can still smile. I can't compare to his boldness in the face of death. As he thought about it, Nangong Ling grit his teeth and felt an adrenaline rush as he thought to himself, since I'm going to die anyway, I might as well curse to my heart's content before I die. At that thought, Nangong Ling threw caution to the wind and cursed, Old dog, what's the use of cultivating to the Dharma characteristic realm? You're still going to die. Aha, I'll wait for you down there, you old fart. The old man from Hellfire Hall was trembling with rage. Su Zimo and Nangong Ling's words had indeed struck a sore spot. No matter how high his cultivation realm was, he could not withstand the corrosion of time. With a dark expression and a cold gaze, the old man from Hellfire Hall said coldly, even if I only have 80 years left, I'll live longer than you brats. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he lowered his head slightly to hide the killing intent in his eyes. The old man from Hellfire Hall grit his teeth. Don't worry, I'll definitely kill you brats before I die. The moment he said that, the glabella of the old man from Hellfire Hall flickered as he released an extremely terrifying and majestic spirit consciousness. It descended with a bang and struck the consciousnesses of Su Zimo and the other three. Ugh! Nangong Ling and the other two shuddered. Their essence spirits dimmed significantly after being struck by the spirit consciousness and fainted on the spot. Su Zimo collapsed limply as well. Let's go. Waving his robes, the old man from Hellfire Hall swept Su Zimo's group of 4 into a gigantic dark cloud and disappeared from the spot with the 7 void reversions. The spirit vessel that was carrying Su Zimo's group of 4 lost its support of dermic powers and hovered for a moment before descending. The night returned to normal. The dark clouds carried Su Zimo and the others at an extremely fast speed. We've done a great deed this time round. Capturing the 3 of them is equivalent to seizing Dao Lord Scarlet Star's Achilles heel. That's right. It's all thanks to Senior Yu. That's right. We've benefited from Senior Yu as well. The 7 void reversions flattered him again. The old man from Hellfire Hall clasped his hands behind his back expressionlessly and said indifferently, if I can fail against 4 nascent soul realm brats, my 10,000 years of life would have been wasted. When he heard the sounds around him, Su Zimo fell to the side. Although he was conscious, he did not move and tried his best to control his emotions. Even his heartbeat and blood flow was maintained at a constant state. If it was just a void reversion, there was no need for him to be so cautious. However, the old man from Hellfire Hall was a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord. Although he was already in his twilight years, Su Zimo did not dare to be careless. The reason why he was able to remain conscious was not because the old man from Hellfire Hall had failed. In his consciousness, the black-haired essence spirit had indeed fainted. Even with the protection of the creation Green Lotus, the black-haired essence spirit could not defend against the attack of the old man's spirit consciousness. However, there was another essence spirit in Su Zimo's consciousness. A scarlet-haired Een spirit formed from cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. At that moment, the scarlet-haired Een spirit was hiding in a corner of his consciousness with a calm expression, waiting patiently for an opportunity to strike. As long as he seized this opportunity, it was not impossible for him to kill the old man from Hellfire Hall. Of course, all of that had to be done before they returned to Hellfire Hall. If he entered the territory of Hellfire Hall, even if he could kill the old man and the other 7 void reversions, he would definitely alert the experts of Hellfire Hall and be captured. They had been speeding for more than 2 hours. Su Zimo had a rough idea of the location of Hellfire Hall. If they were traveling at full speed with dermic weapons controlled by dermic Dao Lords, they would arrive within 4 hours. Time was running out. Once he entered Hellfire Hall, he would have no choice but to wait for death no matter how powerful he was. Su Zimo was getting anxious as well. In fact, he was wondering if he should get up and fight right now. But soon he gave up on that thought. The dark clouds were huge and Su Zimo's group of 4 was still in the middle. Although the 7 void reversions were close to them, the old man from Hellfire Hall stood at the front of the dark clouds. The two of them were 100 feet apart. If Su Zimo made any strange movements, the old man from Hellfire Hall would have noticed it before he even got close to the ladder. There was a 90% chance that his plan would fail. Su Zimo composed himself and continued waiting. The longer this dragged on, the less chances he had. But now he could only wait. He did not have a second chance against the Dharma-characteristic Tao Lord. If he miscalculated, Nangong Ling and the other two would die as well. Right then the old man from Hellfire Hall who was at the front suddenly turned around and walked towards Su Zimo. Senior Yu. The 7 void reversions bowed hurriedly. The old man from Hellfire Hall nodded and looked down at Su Zimo's group of 4 with a dark gaze, seemingly deep in thought. Senior, is there a problem? A void reversion asked softly. It's a pity that my lifespan is almost up. What a waste of this great physical body. The old man from Hellfire Hall shook his head and sighed. Squatting down, he reached out with his skinny palm and pinched Su Zimo's arm. Licking his lips, he said, "If I had met him a few years ago, I would rather give up my body and assimilate him." Is that so? Initially, the old man from Hellfire Hall was lamenting to himself. To his surprise, he heard a reply that was chilling and murderous. Chapter 9:19 Killing a Tao Lord. Chapter 9:19 Killing a Tao Lord. The old man was shocked. The voice did not come from the 7 void reversions around him but from beside his feet. This little nascent soul was not stunned by his spirit consciousness. How was that possible? The old man frowned. Suddenly he sensed the aura of death. This aura had been getting closer and closer with the passage of time over the years. However, he had never felt it so strongly before. It was as though he would die in the next moment. How could a nascent soul threaten him? There was no time to think. The old man from Hellfire Hall wanted to get up immediately and retreat, leaving the dangerous place beneath his feet. All of a sudden, 2 fair and strong palms appeared on the old man's withered wrist and gripped him tightly like iron pincers. Instinctively he struggled but to no avail. The old man's expression changed as he swept his gaze across. Veins popped out on the hands that were gripping his wrists. The bones changed and sharp claws popped out from its fingertips. Scarlet scales could be seen on the back of the hands, looking extremely creepy. The old man of Hellfire Hall looked over instinctively and his pupils constricted. The green-robed man who should have fainted had already sat up. His black hair was gone and in its place was a head of scarlet hair that resembled blood. The green-robed man's eyes shone with a demonic glint and he exuded a shuddering aura. "You're a demon?" Before the old man could finish speaking, he was interrupted by another voice. Those 2 words were enough to send shivers down his spine. "Baron." Before the sentence was finished, an extremely strange dermic power fluctuation appeared in the void. With the green-robed man as the center, gray fluctuations appeared beneath the feet of the old man from Hellfire Hall and enveloped him like water ripples. Initially, the old man from Hellfire Hall could have escaped the range of the gray ripples. However, his wrist was gripped tightly by the green-robed man. With just that slight pause, his entire body was engulfed in gray ripples. It was a strange feeling. As though he had fallen into a swamp, his body turned heavy. Immediately after, the old man of Hellfire Hall seemed to have sensed something as his eyes widened in shock and his body trembled uncontrollably. Life span. The old man from Hellfire Hall opened his mouth with a menacing expression and a quivering voice, as though he was experiencing immense fear. He was nearing his later years and the blood chi in his body was severely depleted. He was extremely frail. But now what was left of his flesh was drying up at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye he was nothing but skin and bones. My lifespan. The old man from Hellfire Hall seemed like he wanted to howl hysterically, but his voice turned increasingly hoarse until it was silent. His widened eyes had already turned dull and his eyeballs were withered. The glabella of the old man from Hellfire Hall flickered and his spirit consciousness rippled, as though the essence spirit in his spirit consciousness wanted to struggle one last time. However, all activity ceased before long. The old man's life force had already vanished without a trace. The 7 void reversions watched helplessly as the old man of Hellfire Hall was drained of all life in a single breath, leaving only a skeleton with no life in his body. All 7 of them were dumbfounded with disbelief in their eyes. Everything happened too quickly and the 7 void reversions were momentarily stunned, unable to recover from their shock. The gray ripple had already reached them. The 7 void reversions did not feel anything initially. But soon their expressions changed. Their lifespans were declining. Although it was not fast, the decline was irreversible. Right then, the green-robed man who was initially sitting on the ground leaped up. He was tall and his clothes were torn with scarlet scales growing on his body. His scarlet hair danced and demonic chi surged with a murderous aura. He was like an ancient demon that wanted to devour the world and slaughter all living beings. Who are you? A void reversion Dao being asked with a trembling voice, his face pale from the fright of the sudden change. The scarlet-haired demon was none other than Su Zimo. Although the process of killing the Dharma characteristic Dao Lord of Hellfire Hall seemed simple, he had actually planned it for a long time. Ever since the old man of Hellfire Hall appeared, Su Zimo had been thinking about how he could escape with Nangong Ling and the other 2. No matter how he thought about it, he could not come up with a foolproof plan. Later on he noticed something. The old man from Hellfire Hall exuded a strong aura of twilight, as though he was about to die. That was the reason why Su Zimo intentionally provoked the old man of Hellfire Hall with words such as, "You don't have much time left to live." Nangong Ling thought that Su Zimo was no longer afraid of death and merely cursed for the sake of it before his death, so he followed suit and cursed. Little did he know that Su Zimo was probing the old man of Hellfire Hall. Indeed, the old man from Hellfire Hall was tricked and revealed that he still had 80 years to live. It was not the old man from Hellfire Hall's fault either. Although he had lived for 10,000 years, he had never heard of a nascent soul controlling a power that could affect Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. Furthermore, this was a power that could cause one's lifespan to decrease irreversibly. He was not the only one. No one in Tianhuang mainland would believe that a nascent soul realm cultivator could control such power. That was also the terror of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Of course, Su Zimo could not understand why there were so many strange and mysterious characters in the demonic art of Baron. Furthermore, his cultivation realm was limited and he could not unleash the true might of Baron. Moreover, the gray ripples that spread out from Baron would cause one's lifespan to decrease faster the closer they were to the center. That was the reason why Su Zimo did not dare to act rashly. He could only wait for an opportunity. He wanted the 2 of them to be close enough to not give the old man of Hellfire Hall any chance to escape. As Su Zimo had expected, after he released Baron, the first reaction of the old man from Hellfire Hall was to retreat. However, Su Zimo had already gripped the old man's arms tightly and the latter could not break free. Of course, even at the center of the gray-colored ripples, the reduction of lifespan was only at a rate of 100 years per breath. 4 ordinary Dharma characteristic Dao Lords, a single breath was enough for them to react or even counterattack. A single spirit consciousness from a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord was enough to kill Su Zimo. However, it was different for the old man from Hellfire Hall. In a single breath, his remaining 80 years of lifespan had been used up. Although the entire process was short, the probing, the waiting, and even the final attack, any single mistake would result in 2 completely different outcomes. The Baron demonic art could not display its true might yet and could only be considered as a special attack. For example, although a Dharma characteristic died within the range of the gray-colored ripples, the 7 void reversions were not affected much. Firstly, the 7 void reversions were slightly further away and their lifespans were decreasing at a relatively slower rate, around 50 to 80 years per breath. Secondly, the 7 of them were only in their 2000s and 3000s. Compared to their lifespan of 5,000 years, they were considered to be at the peak of their prime. The effect of 1 or 2 breaths reducing their lifespans was way too little. Of course, with the old man from Hellfire Hall killed, Su Zimo no longer feared the remaining 7 men. Chapter 920 Flames of War. Chapter 920 Flames of War. What is this demonic art? On the dark clouds, a void reversion shouted in panic. A demonic art meant to kill. Su Zimo hollered and took a deep breath, howling into the skies. Roar. A resounding dragon roar sounded, piercing through metal and cracking rocks as the world shook. There were no outsiders here. Now that Nangong Ling and the other 2 had fainted, Su Zimo no longer had to conceal himself. He transformed into his dragon form and let out a dragon roar. In the primordial era, the dragon race was the supreme of all races. Any race, including humans, would feel uncontrollable fear upon hearing a dragon roar. It was a memory etched in the depths of their bloodlines. The dragon roar was a killing technique of the dragon race to begin with. Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, and his body was infused with dragon blood. His bloodline was even stronger than a true dragon. Right now, that dragon roar had a huge impact on the 7 void reversions. Among them, the void reversion closest to them was caught off guard and froze on the spot with bloodshot eyes and a stiff expression. The next moment, streams of scarlet blood flowed out of the void reversion's 7 orifices. This person was only at void reversion realm and had a weak physique. He could not withstand the penetrative power of the dragon roar and was killed on the spot. Before his essence spirit could escape, it was shattered into pieces. Back in the 1000 demon meat, Su Zimo could already suppress the territorial lords without his dragon form. All the territorial lords were the strongest mid-level fiend demons in 1000 Demon Valley. The 7 void reversions before him were merely cultivators of Hellfire Hall. How could they compare to the territorial lords who fought their way to their respective positions? Furthermore, now that Su Zimo had transformed into his dragon form and released his full strength, the 7 void reversions were no match for him. Even though the void reversions that were standing slightly further away were not killed by the dragon roar, their bodies shuddered and their minds were in chaos as their ears buzzed. In a flash, Su Zimo appeared before one of them and poked his glabella. Poof! There was a bloody hole in his glabella. Before the void reversion could react, his essence spirit was stabbed to death. Even the mid-level fiend demons of 1000 Demon Valley could not defend against Su Zimo's body. Those void reversions had weak physiques and were like paper before Su Zimo, who had transformed into a dragon. They could not withstand a single blow. Swash! Su Zimo's figure flashed once more and demonic chi surged as he extended a thick finger to pierce the glabella of 2 other void reversions at the side. The void reversions were completely helpless against his dragon claws. In the blink of an eye, 4 void reversions were dead. Finally, the remaining 3 void reversions snapped out of their stupor and turned pale when they saw the bloody scene around them. Swoosh! An evil gust of wind blew. A gigantic scarlet figure arrived before the 3 of them and reached out with a menacing, gigantic hand, grabbing towards them. Kill? Among them, 2 void reversions gritted their teeth and released their spirit consciousness attacks immediately. At the same time, they conjured hand seals and conjured 2 gigantic balls of hellfire. The remaining void reversion fled without hesitation. 2 spirit consciousness attacks arrived instantly. However, a bedazzling golden light shone from Su Zimo's left wrist, forming a golden light barrier that was covered with mysterious runes. The Mingwang prayer beads were essence spirit dermic weapons. When the 2 spirit consciousness attacks collided against the golden barrier, they could not penetrate Su Zimo's consciousness and dissipated immediately. The 2 balls of hellfire fused together, forming a dark and cold fireball that smashed towards Su Zimo's face. Snorting coldly, Su Zimo reached out with his right hand and grabbed the ball of hellfire. Under the gazes of the 2 void reversions, the ball of hellfire exploded from Su Zimo's bare hands. However, Su Zimo's palm was intact. The 2 void reversions widened their mouths in shock as though they had seen a ghost. That was the palm with the divine phoenix bone. The hellfire could not corrode it at all. After 2 consecutive failed attacks, Su Zimo had already arrived in front of them. At that distance, the 2 void reversions did not even have a chance to escape. Su Zimo reached out and slapped the top of their heads. Poof! Poof! Their heads were smashed on the spot and their essence spirits were destroyed. Su Zimo raised his head and looked at the last void reversion who had already escaped from the battlefield and was about to disappear into the night. He did not move at all, as though he had given up on his pursuit. However, something strange happened to his right eye. It was as though a blazing sun was born and a blinding beam of light shot through the void, penetrating the head of the void reversion instantly. Thump! The final void reversion fell here as well. The beam dissipated. Night descended once more and peace returned to the world. In the pitch-black clouds there was only a tall figure left. He was covered in scarlet scales and his scarlet hair danced in the wind. His gaze was burning like a peerless fiend celestial with a domineering aura that looked down on the world. At that moment, not many people in the cultivation world knew that the monster incarnate that caused countless paragons and sects to tremble had already arrived in the middle continent. The autumn wind was bleak and the flames of war were about to ignite. In the blink of an eye, the night had passed. The sun had just risen and the skies on the east turned white. Tao Lord Scarlet Star was travel-worn and arrived at the entrance of the 100 Refinements Great Hall with a grim expression. When Tao Lord White Flames saw Tao Lord Scarlet Star return alone, he realized that something was amiss. However, he still went forward and asked, "How was it?" Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. He searched outside for the entire night and was completely exhausted. "Don't worry, they might just be playful. Given their cultivation, they might not be in any danger," Tao Lord White Flames consoled. Tao Lord Scarlet Star sighed. "It's too late." "What?" Tao Lord White Flames asked. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said, "I rushed to Wine Cloud City right away and found out that although the 4 of them caused quite a stir in the city, they managed to escape unscathed. After that, I rushed out of Wind Cloud City and searched everywhere. Finally I found this." Tao Lord Scarlet Star took out a spirit vessel and a look of sadness flashed through his eyes. "This is Ru Xian's spirit vessel. I gave it to her when she entered the nascent soul realm." "This?" Tao Lord White Flames knew that Nangong Ling's group was most likely doomed. However, he still consoled, the loss of the spirit vessel might not prove anything. Perhaps the 4 of them escaped. Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. "There is the remnant aura of a Dharma characteristic on the spirit vessel. Furthermore, it's from Hellfire Hall." "What?" Tao Lord White Flames' expression changed slightly. Enduring his grief, Tao Lord Scarlet Star grit his teeth. "Nangong and the others have already been captured by Hellfire Hall. That aura was left behind intentionally by Hellfire Hall." "Hellfire Hall, you're declaring war and playing with fire here." Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded from the hall with a murderous intent. Tao Lord Scarlet Star lamented, "Poor children. I wonder what sort of torture they will have to endure after falling into the hands of Hellfire Hall." Tao Lord White Flames knew that Nangong Ling and the other 2 were the personal disciples of Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the latter viewed them as his own children. They were extremely close. Now that his 3 disciples were in trouble, no one could understand the pain in Tao Lord Scarlet Star's heart. Tao Lord White Flames did not know how to console him either. Right then, a Sect disciple sped over with a delighted expression and shouted, "Sect Master! Lineage Leader! Senior Brother Nangong and the others are back." Chapter 921, Peerless Expert. Chapter 921, Peerless Expert. At that moment, Tao Lord Scarlet Star was immersed in his sorrow and could not hear anything. However, Tao Lord White Flames frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Which Senior Brother Nangong?" The disciple replied, "Senior Brother Nangong Ling and Senior Sisters Lu Hanyin and Ru Xian." "What?" This time round, Tao Lord Scarlet Star heard everything clearly. He turned around and arrived at the person's body in a flash. Grabbing the shoulders of the disciple with widened eyes, Tao Lord Scarlet Star asked loudly, "Are you saying that Nangong Ling and the others are still alive and have returned?" "Yes, I heard from the patrolling disciples that Senior Brother Nangong and the others are heading towards the sect." The cultivator was shocked by Tao Lord Scarlet Star's behavior and replied hurriedly. The news of Nangong Ling's group of 4 being captured was still a secret and was not made public. Tao Lord White Flames and Tao Lord Crimson Star were worried that this would cause panic. The 2 of them merely instructed their disciples to keep an eye on Nangong Ling's group of 4. Therefore, the cultivator did not know why the 2 Tao Lords were so agitated. Without hesitation, Tao Lord Scarlet Star prepared to head out and welcome them. The more composed Tao Lord White Flames held him down and reminded, "Hold on, it might be a trap." Tao Lord Scarlet Star was stunned for a moment before reacting. This was way too strange. Nangong Ling's group, 4 nascent souls, were captured by a Dharma characteristic of Hellfire Hall. How did they return all of a sudden? With a calm expression, Tao Lord White Flames turned and asked, "Apart from the 4 of them, is there anyone else?" "I'm not sure about that. I don't think so." The disciple replied, "If there were outsiders, the senior brother who sent the message would definitely mention it." Tao Lord Scarlet Star was anxious and asked hurriedly, "Are the 3 of them injured? How are they? Were they coerced?" The disciple was sweating profusely. The message only said that Senior Brother Nangong and the other 3 are safe and sound. As for whether they were coerced, I really don't know. That's enough. Right then, Dao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded in Dao Lord Scarlet Star's mind. Go and bring them back. This calamity should have been resolved. Although Dao Lord Extreme Fire did not know how Su Zimo managed to escape from the hands of Dharma characteristic Dao Lord with Nangong Ling and the other three, he guessed that only Su Zimo could create such a possibility. In truth, Dao Lord Extreme Fire had already guessed most of it. However, he did not expect that Su Zimo did not escape from the hands of a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord. Instead, he killed the latter directly. Alright, I'll go right away. Unable to wait any longer, Dao Lord Scarlet Star sped out of the sect in a flash. Nangong Ling and the other two were already awake on a brand new spirit vessel. After more than 4 hours of traveling, the spirit vessel was about to arrive at 100 Refinement Sect. Little Uncle Master, what's going on? Little Uncle Master, what happened? Didn't we fall into the hands of Hellfire Hall? Little Uncle Master, where's that old fart? Along the way, ever since Nangong Ling and the other two woke up, they approached Su Zimo and chattered non-stop, wanting nothing more than to pry open his skull. Even someone as quiet as Lu Hanyan could not sit still. Blushing slightly, she tugged at Su Zimo's sleeves and asked softly, Uncle Master, what happened last night? Su Zimo had already transformed into his black hair and green robes. He merely sat in front of the spirit vessel and smiled exasperatedly. I don't know either. When I woke up, we were already on the spirit vessel. Little Uncle Master, you're lying. I don't believe you. Ru Xian pouted in doubt. Lu Hanyan tilted her head slightly and looked at Su Zimo unblinkingly with her beautiful eyes, as though she wanted to see through his secret. For some reason, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian felt that this matter definitely had something to do with Su Zimo and was not as simple as he made it out to be. A woman's intuition was truly accurate. It did not make sense either. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he almost thought that he had revealed something. However, he could not explain nor tell them about what happened. Could he tell them that as a nascent soul, he displayed godly powers and killed off a Dharma characteristic? Could he tell them that thereafter, he killed the remaining 7 void reversions in a half-human half-dragon form? That sounded even more magical. Furthermore, he had no intention of revealing his identity just yet. At that thought, Su Zimo could only grit his teeth and reply, my cultivation realm is higher, so I woke up earlier than you guys. Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian were still in disbelief. Compared to the two of them, Nangong Ling was clearly much more practical. He stood by the side and helped Su Zimo out of the predicament. Junior sisters, don't bother Little Uncle Master anymore. There should be a Peerless expert who helped us in this matter. That's the only reason why we survived. Who is that Peerless expert? Why isn't he showing himself? Ru Xian pouted and asked. This? Nangong Ling was embarrassed and speechless. How would he know who the Peerless expert was? Ru Xian turned around and glared at Su Zimo. Humph, Little Uncle Master, don't even think about hiding it. This definitely has something to do with you. I got it. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Ru Xian's mind and she exclaimed. Everyone present was shocked. Ru Xian approached Su Zimo mysteriously and said firmly, Little Uncle Master, stop hiding. You were definitely the one who sought out that Peerless expert, right? Su Zimo, After a while, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he saw that both of them were still pestering him. Suddenly, his expression turned unfathomable. Alright, since you've discovered my secret, I won't hide it anymore. Su Zimo coughed gently and said indifferently, actually, I was the one who killed the Dharma characteristic Dao Lord of Hellfire Hall and the remaining 7 void reversions thereafter before rescuing you guys. Tisk. Now that Su Zimo said it as such, Ru Xian did not believe him instead. On the other hand, Lu Hanyan frowned slightly and fell into deep thought, as though she had to ponder over Su Zimo's words for a long time. 100 Refinement Sect was right ahead. All of a sudden, the sound of clothes fluttering through the air echoed as a figure sped over and arrived on the spirit vessel in the blink of an eye. Master! Nangong Ling and the other two had just escaped death. Now that they saw Dao Lord Scarlet Star, they were naturally delighted and stood up to greet him. However, right after, the three of them seemed to have thought of something and gradually reacted. All of them felt guilty and lowered their heads, not daring to speak. Dao Lord Scarlet Star was initially worried. However, when he saw that Nangong Ling and the other two were alive and well without any injuries, his expression darkened and he was enraged. You three brats. How much worry do you guys want to cause? After a brief silence, Tao Lord Scarlet Star roared and sprayed saliva all over the three of their faces. Su Zimo looked at Nangong Ling and the other two and shrugged his shoulders, wishing them all the best. He hurriedly distanced himself from them, afraid that he would be implicated. Chapter 922, Who are the Juniors? Chapter 922, Who are the Juniors? From the entrance of the sect to the entrance of the 100 Refinements Great Hall. Nangong Ling and the other two were scolded by Tao Lord Scarlet Star the entire way. Although they were lambasted and their faces were covered in saliva, none of them dared to wipe it off. Without Nangong Ling and the other two pestering him, Su Zimo watched the commotion from the side and was happy to relax. Tao Lord Scarlet Star naturally asked him about the entire incident as well. However, Su Zimo insisted that he knew nothing and casually brushed it off, saying that he was already on the spirit vessel when he woke up. Tao Lord Scarlet Star led Su Zimo's group of 4 to the entrance of 100 Refinements Great Hall before stopping his lectures to take a breather. Master, you're tired too. We know we were wrong. Quick, drink some water. Wuxian was the best at pleasing Tao Lord Scarlet Star. She hurried over and retrieved a steaming cup of tea from out of thin air before handing it over. Tao Lord Scarlet Star harumphed and took the cup of tea, downing it in one gulp. He said in a displeased manner, I'll teach you guys a good lesson after this period of time. Nangong Ling and the other two exchanged glances. They knew that this episode had come to an end. The three of them heaved a sigh of relief and pulled up their sleeves in unison, wiping the saliva off their faces. It's good that you're fine. The 1,000 Crane Tea Party is in a month's time and you'll have a chance to redeem yourselves. Tao Lord White Flames chuckled and tried to smooth things over. After some thought, Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and frowned at Su Zimo. Junior brother, although you're young, you're still their senior. Why did you go along with their nonsense? Don't you know how to stop them? Su Zimo had just taken out the heaven-slaying sword art and was prepared to continue comprehending it. Unexpectedly, Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and started lecturing him. All you do all day is read that stupid book. What are you able to get out of that? After lecturing Nangong Ling and the other two, it was clear that Tao Lord Scarlet Star was still angry. He continued, as their uncle master, you have to study hard and be a role model. You can't just idle around and read useless books all day. Su Zimo was completely stumped. This was the first time he heard someone refer to the heaven-slaying sword art as a useless book. Su Zimo knew that Tao Lord Scarlet Star was concerned about Nangong Ling and the other two. That was why he was now a target of the latter's lecture. It was not out of malice. Su Zimo did not take it to heart and merely smiled without defending himself. However, Nangong Ling and the other two could not take it anymore. Lu Hanyin stood out hurriedly and said, Master, you can't blame Uncle Master for this. I wanted to go to the Wind Cloud gathering and senior brother Nangong and junior sister Wuxian accompanied me. Uncle Master tried his best to stop me but I was too stubborn. It's not your fault, junior sister. Nangong Ling added, Junior sister will be taking part in the weapon refinement competition in a month's time. She's under too much pressure and that's why she wanted to take a breather. Furthermore, little Uncle Master did try his best to stop us in this matter. I was the one who kept causing trouble and he followed us because he was worried that we would be in danger. After what happened in Wind Cloud City, Nangong Ling watched as Su Zimo crippled Ching Peng who was ranked 15 on the phenomenon ranking. Thereafter, he had even suppressed Jian Wuzong who was ranked 3rd on the phenomenon ranking to the point where the latter could not even draw his sword. Nangong Ling's impression of Su Zimo had changed drastically. At that moment he even stood out to speak up for Su Zimo. Tao Lord Scarlet Star frowned slightly. His disciples had always respected the seniority hierarchy and had never disobeyed him in the past. Even when he reprimanded them earlier on, none of them rebutted. To think that now he had merely made a few remarks about Mo Ling but the few of them could not take it. Tao Lord Scarlet Star looked at Su Zimo meaningfully and thought to himself, seems like this junior brother of mine is rather capable. He knew his 3 disciples the best. All of them were prideful. None of them would respect an uncle master who appeared out of the blue and was younger than them. Furthermore, the latter's cultivation realm was similar to theirs as well. To think that in just 2 months, his 3 disciples were already starting to defend their uncle master. Wuxian jumped out as well and said straightforwardly in a huff, Master, you're not allowed to reprimand little Uncle Master. Do you know that if not for him, the three of us would have been bullied to death in Wind Cloud City? At that point, Ru Xian's eyes reddened and she was almost in tears. Dao Lord Crimson Star had been to Wine Cloud City. However, he merely had a rough gist of things and did not know the details. Before he could ask, Ru Xian had already recounted the battles in Wind Cloud City in tears. 2 paragons on the phenomenon ranking were defeated, 2 assassins of Hidden Death Sect were captured and killed, more than 10 Sword Sect cultivators were slain with a single slash. That battle report was shocking enough by itself. Coupled with Ru Xian's exaggerated narration, even Dao Lord Scarlet Star and Dao Lord White Flames felt their blood boil with excitement. Dao Lord Scarlet Star's brows gradually relaxed and his gaze towards Su Zimo softened. Lu Hanyin took out a black stone from her storage bag and handed it over. Master, this is the stone. Dao Lord Crimson Star received it. A single sweep of a Dharma characteristic spirit consciousness was enough to detect it. It's a lava crystal indeed. Dao Lord Scarlet Star and Dao Lord White Flames exchanged glances and nodded. Ru Xian continued, although I don't know why you guys are in such a hurry to collect these top-grade spirit materials, without little Uncle Master, this stone would have been snatched away long ago. Yes, Mo Ling did a good job on this matter. Given his status, there was no way Dao Lord Scarlet Star would apologize to Su Zimo. Therefore he chuckled and said, "Cough as expected of my junior brother. You've truly done the sect proud." Nangong Ling and the other 2 finally smiled. Unexpectedly, Dao Lord Scarlet Star seemed to have thought of something and suddenly turned around. Glaring at Ru Xian and the other 2, he scolded, "Uncle Master is Uncle Master. What do you mean by little Uncle Master? In what way is he little? Look at the 3 of you. You have no manners at all. Change your ways from now on, do you hear me?" Got it? Nangong Ling and the other 2 did not dare to rebut and gave a feeble acknowledgement. Gripping the lava crystal, Dao Lord Scarlet Star turned and walked into the hall, intending to hand the stone over to Dao Lord Extreme Fire first. In the depths of the hall, in a spirit pool filled with immortal chi, an essence spirit with a red glow sat upright. Just as Dao Lord Scarlet Star placed the lava crystal at the side, he heard Dao Lord Extreme Fire say indifferently, "You were quite the man earlier on." Ah. When Dao Lord Scarlet Star heard that Dao Lord Extreme Fire's tone did not sound right, he chuckled dryly. "Grandmaster, you must be joking. I'm merely teaching juniors a lesson." "Who are the juniors?" Dao Lord Extreme Fire asked again. All of them." Dao Lord Crimson Star felt a chill run down his spine and his gaze wavered without confidence. Dao Lord Extreme Fire's essence spirit walked out of the spirit pool slowly and said coldly, "Mo Ling is my disciple. He's in the same generation as your master Tianxin. You dare to refer to him as your junior brother?" Ah! Dao Lord Scarlet Star was shocked. In that case he would have to address Mo Ling respectfully as Uncle Master. "How dare you teach your Uncle Master Mo Ling a lesson? Are you trying to defy the hierarchy and go against the ancestry?" Dao Lord Extreme Fire berated. With a thud, Dao Lord Scarlet Star knelt on the ground in fright and wanted to cry. This was great. Although he delivered the stone personally, not only did he not receive any praise, he was lambasted and even had an Uncle Master now. Chapter 923 Great Advantage. Chapter 923, Great Advantage. In front of the 100 Refinement Hall. Not long after he entered, Dao Lord Scarlet Star walked out dejectedly and looked at Su Zimo with a disgruntled expression. Su Zimo did not know what happened within the hall, but he felt a little creeped out by the way Dao Lord Scarlet Star was looking at him. Sigh. Dao Lord Scarlet Star sighed internally. At the thought of his Grandmaster's reprimand, he could only come before Su Zimo obediently. Under the gazes of Nangong Ling and his other 2 disciples, he bowed slightly and greeted as a junior. Taking a deep breath, he said, "Scarlet Star pays his respect to the little Uncle Master." After saying that, Dao Lord Scarlet Star felt his cheeks burn and wished he could dig a hole to hide in. Although he did not look up, he could guess the expressions of Nangong Ling and the other 2. Su Zimo was a smart man. Instantly, he guessed that Dao Lord Scarlet Star must have been taught a lesson by Dao Lord Extreme Fire in the hall. Su Zimo did not care much about seniority. Furthermore, he was young and his cultivation realm was low. Now that he had gained such a great advantage, he felt a little embarrassed instead. He hurried forward and helped Dao Lord Scarlet Star up. There's no need for that. If you don't mind, Senior, you can just call me by my name. That won't do. Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head. Although he was displeased and indignant from the bottom of his heart, both he and the sect placed great importance on seniority and etiquette. He could not break the rules. Nangong Ling and the other two were at a loss and were stunned. How did their master end up bowing to greet Mo Ling as Uncle Master in the blink of an eye? In terms of seniority, wouldn't they have to call Mo Ling Grand Uncle Master? Master. Ru Xian hurried over and could not help but ask, "What's going on? Isn't Mo Ling your junior brother? Why did he suddenly become your Uncle Master?" Feeling aggrieved, Tao Lord Scarlet Star glared and hollered, "Why are you asking so many questions? Get lost." Subsequently, he called out to Ru Xian and the other two and said in a deep voice, "Listen up, you guys have to change the way you address him in the future. This is your Grand Uncle Master. Our seniority has dropped again." Nangong Ling and the other two exchanged glances and lamented internally with that single statement. Without much hesitation, they bowed to Su Zimo and greeted, "Greetings, Grand Uncle Master." To them, Uncle Master and Grand Uncle Master did not matter. Both were just titles. That was because they had already accepted Su Zimo in their hearts. On the other hand, Tao Lord Scarlet Star stood by the side, brooding. When he swept his gaze and saw that Tao Lord White Flames was about to take the opportunity to slip away, he hurried forward and pulled the ladder over. "Don't run either. We're of the same generation. You have to call him Uncle Master too." Now that Tao Lord Scarlet Star had found a companion, he felt slightly better and gloated. Tao Lord White Flames was the sect master of 100 Refinement Sect and had an esteemed status. It was even harder for him to address Su Zimo as Uncle Master. Little Uncle Master. Given the circumstances, he could only grit his teeth and shout. "Ah." Right then Ru Xian came over and pretended to be confused. "Uncle Master is Uncle Master. What do you mean by little Uncle Master? In what way is he little?" Tao Lord Crimson Star blushed. That was what he had said to Ru Xian and the other two earlier on. To think that the tables would have turned and Ru Xian would come over to mock them instead. "He is young in age, what's wrong?" Tao Lord Scarlet Star straightened his neck and argued with a red face. "He's only 100 years old and he's young to begin with. There's nothing wrong with us calling him Little Uncle Master." It was as though in his heart, the word little was the last bit of dignity he could fight for. Su Zimo smiled. "Seniors, there's no need for that. If anyone else is around, you can just call me by my name." This was a huge leeway for the two of them. Otherwise, it would be truly awkward if the master of a sect had to pay his respects to a nascent soul younger than 200 years old in front of all the disciples. "Thank you, Little Uncle Master." Tao Lord Scarlet Star gave an embarrassed smile and agreed. "If there's nothing else, I'll head back first." Su Zimo bid farewell and turned to leave. Staying here would only make things more awkward. Nangong Ling and the other two bowed and bid farewell as well. Tao Lord Scarlet Star and Tao Lord White Flame stood at the entrance of the hall and exchanged glances. What happened in the morning was truly magical. For some reason, the two of them now had an Uncle Master. "I'm sure you guys are indignant about acknowledging him as an Uncle Master." Right then, Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded in their minds. "I wouldn't dare to." Tao Lord Scarlet Star shook his head hurriedly, afraid that he would be scolded by Tao Lord Extreme Fire again. Tao Lord White Flames added, "It's nothing much. Since he's your disciple, he's our Uncle Master according to seniority." Tao Lord Extreme Fire chuckled. "You said that you wouldn't dare. In other words, you're truly indignant in your heart." Tao Lord Crimson Star did not say anything. It was a silent acknowledgement. Tao Lord Extreme Fire did not reprimand him further and merely asked, "Do you guys think that Nangong Ling and the other two are able to return unscathed because they were lucky and came across a peerless expert who rescued them without even leaving his name behind?" Then what happened? Tao Lord Scarlet Star was stunned for a moment before grunting. "Grandmaster, are you saying that Mo Ling, Little Uncle Master, saved him? He's a nascent soul. Even if he's strong and can suppress the paragons on the phenomenon ranking, can he fight against Dharma characteristic Tao Lords?" Tao Lord White Flames nodded as well. It was clear that he did not believe that Su Zimo was behind this. That was a complete fantasy. Tao Lord Extreme Fire replied indifferently, "Although I don't know the exact situation, it's definitely related to Mo Ling. If there was anyone in Tianhuang mainland who understood Su Zimo's capabilities the most, Tao Lord Extreme Fire was definitely one of them. Tao Lord Scarlet Star and Tao Lord White Flames exchanged glances. Although they did not refute him verbally, they thought otherwise. Tao Lord Extreme Fire continued, "Perhaps your impression of him will change after you two know his true identity. Perhaps you'll believe me at that time." The two Tao Lords were intrigued. Tao Lord Scarlet Star asked, "Grandmaster, what is Mo Ling's true identity?" "I can't tell you yet." Tao Lord Extreme Fire pondered deeply. "However, I'm guessing that given his character, he won't be able to hide his identity for long." Upon hearing Tao Lord Extreme Fire's words, the two of them were even more curious. What sort of status did a nascent soul have to be so highly regarded by Tao Lord Extreme Fire? Tao Lord Extreme Fire sighed faintly and said meaningfully, "One day, all of you will realize that you're the ones who gained a great advantage by acknowledging him as your uncle master." Ah! The two of them were even more puzzled. Why was it getting more ridiculous? Tao Lord Extreme Fire said, "You guys can go. Prepare for the 1,000 Crane Tea Party a month later. I'm almost done with the reconstruction spirit materials. After the tea party, prepare to reconstruct my body." The two of them acknowledged and bid farewell. Before long, Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded once more. "By the way, the book that Mo Ling is reading isn't some useless book. It's one of the 3 ancient sword arts, the heaven-slaying sword art. Little tiger, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue when you spouted those bold words? Heaven-slaying sword art." Tao Lord Scarlet Star shuddered and stood alone in the wind. Chapter 924, Tao Fire of the Immortal Sects. Chapter 924, Tao Fire of the Immortal Sects. Hellfire Hall. In the cold and sinister hall, a dark and sinister face was illuminated by the flickering candlelight. Before long, a cultivator of Hellfire Hall strode into the hall and knelt on one knee with cupped fists. "Master, Uncle Yu and the 7 Void Reversion senior brothers have been found. They're all dead, right?" The Hellfire Hall master said faintly, seemingly unsurprised. Right now it was already noon. The fact that Uncle Yu and the others had not returned at this time meant that the interception had failed. However, he was puzzled. According to the news from their spies in 100 Refinement Sect, Nangong Ling's group of 4 did not have any Dharma characteristic experts following them to Wine Cloud City. How could Uncle Yu have failed in his attack? A name appeared in the mind of the Hellfire Hall master, Mo Ling. He frowned. That was impossible. According to reliable sources, Mo Ling was only at nascent soul realm and could not threaten Uncle Yu and the others. "Bring the corpses up." The Hellfire Hall master composed himself and said. Several Hellfire Hall cultivators carried 8 corpses into the hall and placed them carefully on the ground before retreating. The Hellfire Hall master walked down the platform and arrived beside the 8 corpses with a slightly focused gaze. Lifespan exhaustion. The Hellfire Hall master frowned. What happened that caused Uncle Yu to die from an exhaustion of his lifespan? The way he died was way too strange. It was impossible for Uncle Yu to have released methods that would have exhausted his own lifespan on his own accord. The Hellfire Hall master swept his gaze across the other 7 corpses and his pupils constricted. The wounds on the 7 corpses were simple. Their glabellas were either pierced or their heads were smashed. There were no additional wounds on their bodies. They died extremely cleanly. The Hellfire Hall sniffed and his expression changed slightly, as though he had discovered something. "Master, what's wrong?" The cultivator standing at the front was the #1 weapon refinement genius of Hellfire Hall, Ming Han, who was about to compete with 100 Refinement Sect. "There's demonic chi left behind." The Hellfire Hall master pondered deeply and said, "What a domineering demonic chi." Ming Han frowned and asked, "Did Uncle Yu and the others encounter an accident and were attacked by high-level fiend demons?" "It's possible." However, the Hellfire Hall master shook his head quickly. "That's not right. If they were attacked by high-level fiend demons, those 4 juniors wouldn't have survived either. Why are their corpses missing?" Right then, a disciple of Hellfire Hall sped over and knelt on the ground, greeting respectfully, "Hall Master, the spies of 100 Refinement Sect have sent news that Nangong Ling and the other 3 have returned to 100 Refinement Sect safe and sound." The face of the Hellfire Hall master darkened and 2 balls of dark flames burned in his eyes with killing intent. The disciple of Hellfire Hall lowered his head and trembled, not daring to speak. After a long time, the flames in the eyes of the Hellfire Hall Master gradually dissipated as he waved his hand. You may leave. The disciple of Hellfire Hall felt as though he was pardoned and retreated swiftly. Master, don't worry. Ming Han said proudly, the Thousand Crane Tea Party is in a month's time. At that time, I will definitely defeat Lu Hanyan and clear up the name of Hellfire Hall. Yes. The Hellfire Hall Master nodded. As long as you win this weapon refinement battle, a super sect will step in for you. At that time, many factions will add fuel to the fire and 100 refinement sects' reputation will be tarnished in front of everyone. They will definitely be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. Don't worry, Master. Ming Han said confidently, Lu Hanyan won't win. The Hellfire Hall Master smiled sinisterly and narrowed his eyes, saying coldly, 100 refinement sect, let's see how you're going to win this round. After this experience, Nangong Ling and the other two no longer created any fusses. The Thousand Crane Tea Party would begin in another month. Under Tao Lord Scarlet Star's urging, the three of them entered seclusion. Su Zimo had a peaceful life as well. Apart from comprehending the heaven-slaying sword art daily, he spent his days trying to condense the immortal Tao Fire to practice the fire-dermic arts that Tao Lord Extreme Fire imparted to him. Right now he had already cultivated a Buddhist Tao Fire. Although the Tao Fire of the Buddhist monasteries condensed from the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra was extraordinary, it was still no match for top-tier dermic arts. If he could condense another Tao Fire, even if there were only 2 of the Samadhi Tao flames formed, its power would increase tremendously. Now that he was back in the cultivation world, it was inconvenient for him to reveal his demonic cultivation capabilities. That was the reason why it was extremely important for him to raise his combat strength by mastering some fire element dermic arts. A month passed by swiftly. This day, Su Zimo sat crossed in his cave abode with his eyes closed. A golden flame floated around him and revolved slowly. His hands were placed naturally on his knees, palms facing the skies as he conjured hand seals repeatedly. Failure. Reconjure. Another failure. Reconjure again. He failed countless times. All of a sudden, a finger snap sounded. A scarlet wisp of flame appeared on Su Zimo's fingertip. Initially, it was flickering as though a gust of wind could extinguish it. Before long, the wisp of flame stabilized. Immortal Tao Fire, success. Su Zimo was delighted as he looked at the wisp of scarlet flame. He smiled and flicked his finger. The scarlet flame floated and arrived before him, revolving around his body one after another with the golden flame. This move was also a fire elemental dermic art known as the Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern. With the 2 flames surrounding him, he could attack and defend. Any enemy that tried to approach him would be burned by the flames. Little Granduncle Master, open the door. Suddenly there was the sound of knocking. With a single thought from Su Zimo, the 2 balls of flames dissipated into the void. Thereafter, the door of the cave abode opened slowly as though it was being pulled by a pair of invisible hands. Ru Xian skipped in. Nangong Ling and Lu Hanyan followed closely behind. The 3 of them did not change much after a month. However, Lu Hanyan looked even more composed, as though she was prepared. Little Granduncle Master, let's go. You're the only one who can stand staying within your cave abode obediently. Every other cultivator can't wait. Ru Xian said, the Thousand Crane Tea Party is about to be held. 100 Refinement Sect is setting off today. At that point, Su Zimo's heart stirred as well. This day had finally arrived. After 100 years, he could finally see those old friends again. If nothing went wrong, he should be able to see Ji Qingtian and Lung Ro at the Thousand Crane Tea Party. The 3 of them had joined Ethereal Peak together and experienced many things. There was also Xiaoning and Night Spirit. He wondered how they were now after 100 years. Of course, there was another person. A cold glint flashed through Su Zimo's eyes before vanishing. Dean. All the nascent soul paragons of the Middle Continent would gather at the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Su Zimo believed that Dean would not give this grand occasion a miss. If he encountered Dean at the Thousand Crane Tea Party, he would definitely find an opportunity to kill Dean on the spot. Of course, 100 years had passed. He had grown rapidly and his combat strength had increased significantly as well. Dean would not remain stagnant either. Su Zimo was filled with anticipation as he chanted silently, Dean, I believe you won't disappoint me. Chapter 925 Thousand Crane Sect. Chapter 925, Thousand Crane Sect. 100 Refinement Sect. The cultivators of the sects that were attending the Thousand Crane Tea Party were already gathered in front of the 100 Refinement Grand Hall. There were more than 1,000 of them and almost all of them were nascent souls. Suzimo was among them. That was the foundation of a super sect. 100 Refinement Sect was merely a weapon refinement sect and there were already more than 1,000 nascent souls just like that. Furthermore, that was not all. It was easy to imagine the strength of the ancient super sects such as the 9 Immortal sects and 7 Fiend sects that focused on combat cultivation. There were less than 100 nascent souls in Ethereal Peak. Surveying his surroundings, Suzimo looked at Nangong Ling and the other two beside him and asked softly, "It seems like there's only going to be one void reversion accompanying us to Thousand Crane Sect." Following Suzimo's gaze, there was a void reversion standing in front of Tao Lord White Flames and Tao Lord Scarlet Star, bowing slightly with a respectful greeting. The person listened to the advice of the two Tao Lords and nodded from time to time with a respectful expression. When Ru Xian heard that, she volunteered to explain everything to Suzimo. The Thousand Crane Tea Party was a grand cultivation event held by Thousand Crane Sect once every 1,000 years. It was a rare opportunity. As the name suggested, the theme of the Thousand Crane Tea Party was tea drinking. This tea was not an ordinary tea from the mortal world. It was mystic tea that was extremely beneficial to the essence spirits of nascent souls who consumed it. Therefore, most of the people attending the Thousand Crane Tea Party were nascent souls. Of course, the major sects and factions might send 1 or 2 void reversions to accompany them to the tea party. But no matter what, the paragons of the nascent soul realm were definitely the main characters of this tea party. Ru Xian said, "That's why it's useless for so many void reversions to go. I heard that the Thousand Crane Sect's master hosts the tea parties personally. He's a dharma characteristic so nothing will go wrong." Suzimo nodded, he finally understood. Ru Xian then pointed to the void reversion not far away. "That's Dao Being Yu Ding, the sect master's eldest disciple. He's at the perfected void reversion realm and is quite good at weapon refinement and combat strength." Nangong Ling added, "Senior brother Yu Ding is calm and composed in handling matters. Seems like he should be the one leading the group this time round." As he said that, the two Dao Lords, White Flames and Scarlet Star, seemed to have finished their instructions. Dao Being Yu Ding turned around and walked towards Suzimo's group of 4. Dao Being Yu Ding was more than 3,000 years old and was in his prime. He arrived before Suzimo with a calm demeanor and bowed slightly. "Greetings, Granduncle Master. I'm young, there's no need to be so polite, Dao brother." Suzimo helped Dao Being Yu Ding up gently and nodded with a smile. Although Dao Being Yu Ding was stern and reserved, he was extremely well-mannered and sent a voice transmission. "In name, I'll be leading the expedition. However, both Master and the lineage leader have just instructed me to follow your decisions should anything happen. I'm not from the Middle Continent nor have I been to Thousand Crane Sect. I don't know much about everything. It's fine for you to lead the expedition alone, Dao brother." It was not that Suzimo was being polite. He truly did not know anything about the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Despite Suzimo's words, Dao Being Yu Ding did not have any hint of disdain. He bowed politely once more before turning to the group of cultivators. Dao Being Yu Ding pressed his palms against the air without saying anything and the noisy nascent souls below quickly quietened down. "On this trip to Thousand Crane Sect, I hope that all of you fellow sect mates will take care of one another and abide by the rules. Don't embarrass the sect. Furthermore, we have a weapon refinement fight with Hellfire Hall. At that time, all of you must cheer for junior sister Lu." "Understood." Everyone agreed readily. "Let's go." With a wave of his hand, Dao Being Yu Ding summoned a gigantic spirit vessel from his storage bag. It floated in front of the grand hall and he was the first to leap in. Many nascent souls followed closely behind. Suzimo's group of 4 followed suit. The spirit vessel tore through the air and soon disappeared above 100 Refinement Sect, turning into a black dot that gradually journeyed into the distance. Dao Lord White Flames and Dao Lord Scarlet Star stood with their hands behind their backs, looking at the spirit vessel that was gradually disappearing into the distance with deep worry on their faces. Dao Lord Scarlet Star murmured, "I have a feeling that something big is going to happen at Thousand Crane Tea Party this time round. I hope Han Yen can win this round." "Sigh, I've been feeling uneasy recently as well." Dao Lord White Flame shook his head slightly. This tea party will be watched by everyone. If Hanyan loses, our 100 Refinement Sect's reputation will definitely suffer. Dao Lord White Flame said worriedly, I'm just worried that someone will add fuel to the fire and remove us from the 4 unorthodox groups at this tea party. By that time, even if Grandmaster Extreme Fire were to reconstruct his body and reappear, it would be too late. Right then, Dao Lord Extreme Fire's calm voice sounded from the hall. Come in, both of you. The 2 Dao Lords hurriedly entered the hall. There are a few letters here. Deliver them to them personally without any mistake. The 2 of them received the letters and scanned through them. When they saw the Dao titles written, they were shocked. Go on. Dao Lord Extreme Fire said indifferently, it's time to tell some old friends that I'm back. It was already close to half a day after they set off at dawn. Everyone from 100 Refinement Sect rode on their spirit vessels and entered 1000 Crane Sect's territory. Before they even arrived at 1000 Crane Sect, they could already see cranes circling in midair and chirping softly, welcoming the guests in a warm manner. When he saw those cranes, Su Zimo could not help but be reminded of the old immortal crane in Ching Ching of Ethereal Peak. Lu Hanyan noticed that and said with a smile, Granduncle Master, these cranes aren't real demon beasts. Ha! Su Zimo was surprised. Lu Hanyan beckoned gently and a crane chirped softly. It landed beside her slowly and extended its beak, rubbing Lu Hanyan's arm gently in an extremely obedient manner. Lu Hanyan patted the crane's head gently. The crane disappeared and turned into a talisman that floated down slowly. Thereafter, Lu Hanyan tossed the talisman into the air and it transformed into a crane once more and flew away. The transformation of the talisman was truly miraculous. Su Zimo could not help but exclaim, as expected of 1000 Crane Sect. After a while more, everyone could already see the entrance of 1000 Crane Sect. Who's up ahead? Please show me your sect badge. 2000 Crane Sect disciples leaped forward and bowed slightly, blocking the spirit vessel of 100 Refinement Sect. Dao Bing Yuding was naturally the person to liaise for such matters. 100 Refinement Sect and 1000 Crane Sect were both from the 4 unorthodox groups and were extremely familiar with one another. This was merely a simple formality. Su Zimo noticed that the 2000 Crane Sect disciples who were welcoming the guests were both women. They were extraordinary and charming. Ru Xian chuckled. Granduncle Master, most of the cultivators of 1000 Crane Sect are beauties. You have to make good use of this opportunity. I heard that Fairy Lung Ro of 1000 Crane Sect is a peerless beauty. She's cold as ice and doesn't have the slightest bit of mortal aura. She's like a fairy banished from the Moon Palace. Nangong Ling said, I wonder if we're lucky to be able to catch a glimpse of her during this trip. Although Lu Hanyin had a calm personality and was aloof from worldly affairs, she could not help but snort when she heard that. Nangong Ling shuddered in fear. Su Zimo was in a great mood at the thought of meeting an old friend. He patted the latter on the shoulder and said half-jokingly, good luck. Chapter 926 Fierce Battle. Chapter 926 Fierce Battle. Upon entering 1000 Crane Sect with Dao Bing Yuding, one could see towering mountains with lucent green waters and lush vegetation. A few thousand feet tall waterfalls fell and water splashed everywhere, creating a faint mist that rose densely, resembling a paradise. 100 Refinement Sect gave off an ancient metallic feeling. As for 1000 Crane Sect, it was more like an ethereal immortal palace, a paradise on earth. Su Zimo's gaze shifted and he saw an ancient tree uprooting from the ground in a spacious courtyard far away. It was upright and had luxuriant leaves. The crown of the tree was lush and gave off a clear fragrance. Even from 1000 feet away, he could still smell a faint fragrance. The fragrance jolted everyone from 100 Refinement Sect, and it was as though their essence spirits had condensed a little in an instant. If he was not wrong, this should be the legendary mystic tea tree from the primordial era. Its reputation precedes its presence. Indeed, it's mystical. Su Zimo nodded slightly. If these were the effects upon a faint whiff of the mystic tea tree's fragrance, upon consumption of a cup of mystic tea, the benefits would be even more obvious. After absorbing the massive life essence of the 1000-year blood sea, Su Zimo's cultivation realm had already reached the peak of late-stage nascent soul. After a few more battles and 3 months of consolidation cultivation, he was only missing an opportunity to break through to perfected nascent soul. If he could drink a cup of mystic tea, there was a high chance that he could break through. Right then Wuxian said, "There are only so many tea leaves. There's a limit to the number of mystic tea. Not every nascent soul realm paragon will get the chance to drink a cup. Furthermore, little granduncle master, take a look." Su Zimo followed Wuxian's finger and focused his gaze. Wuxian said, "The quality of the tea leaves on the mystic tea tree is different. The tea leaves at the tip of the tree are the most tender, and the effect of refining one's essence spirit is shocking. It's also known as a supreme-grade mystic tea." True enough. There were 5 leaves on the top of the mystic tea tree. They were emerald green and crystalline like the most beautiful treasures in the world. Wuxian continued, "However, there are only a few cups of supreme-grade mystic tea. Nascent souls who are qualified to drink this tea are all geniuses among geniuses." This was not only a great opportunity, it was also a supreme honor. To be able to drink a cup of supreme-grade mystic tea was not inferior to being ranked top 10 on the phenomenon ranking. Lu Hanyan smiled. "It's already a great opportunity if we can get to drink a cup of mystic tea. We can only dream about the supreme-grade mystic tea." At the side, Nangong Ling said softly, "Little granduncle master, don't worry. Given your strength, you'll definitely have a chance to get a cup of mystic tea for this 1,000-crane tea party. If not, I'll give you mine." "Huh." Su Zimo was slightly surprised. Nangong Ling explained, "This is a tacit rule of the tea party. Cultivators of the previous phenomenon ranking are all eligible for a cup of mystic tea." Ever since the battle at Wind Cloud City, Nangong Ling's attitude towards Su Zimo had changed drastically. Now he even offered the mystic tea. Su Zimo burst into laughter and waved it off, teasing, "That's not necessary. You can give it to your junior sister Han Yen." "Ha." Upon hearing that, Nangong Ling blushed and rubbed his hands in embarrassment, as though Su Zimo had read his mind. "Granduncle master." Lu Hanyan blushed as well and spat softly. "Look, Snowdrift Valley is here." Suddenly, a cultivator beside him exclaimed, "TSK, they're all beauties. What a feast for the eyes." Some cultivators were lecherous and almost drooled at the sight. "I heard that perfected Lord Ling Bai of Snowdrift Valley is here. He seems to be number 20 on the phenomenon ranking and one of the few male cultivators in Snowdrift Valley." "That's the one. What a blessing to be surrounded by a group of Snowdrift Valley women. What's there to see about men? I heard that Fairy Luo Shui is the leader of Snowdrift Valley's expedition this time round. She's a famous beauty in the Middle Continent." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat at the mention of Fairy Luo Shui. In the ancient battlefield 100 years ago, the nascent soul that led Snowdrift Valley was none other than Fairy Luo Shui. She was one of the few nascent souls that survived among the 13 that were present back then. Su Zimo looked over. Snowdrift Valley was driving a gigantic frost spirit vessel over slowly with a chilling aura. The person in the lead was dressed in fluttering white robes with black hair. Standing at the bow of the ship, she was pure and elegant. It was none other than Fairy Luo Shui from 100 years ago. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, Fairy Luo Shui had helped Su Zimo. Furthermore, she did not choose to escape against the massacre of the Rakshasa and God race. Instead, she chose to stay and fight against the two races. Although Su Zimo was not too familiar with Fairy Luo Shui, he had a good impression of her. After 100 years, Fairy Luo Shui had already cultivated to the Void Reversion realm. Although she was severely injured during the battle in Myriad Phenomenon City, she took the opportunity to break through to Void Reversion realm and became the youngest Void Reversion in the sect. Many cultivators in the surroundings exclaimed when they saw Fairy Luo Shui's face. Many gazes gathered over. Su Zimo was unassuming among the 100 Refinement Sect cultivators and naturally would not attract Fairy Luo Shui's attention. Apart from Snowdrift Valley and 100 Refinement Sect. In that short period of time, many sects and factions arrived at 1,000 Crane Sect. Su Zimo had already seen quite a number of upper sects of the cultivation world. There were a total of 108 upper sects in Tianhuang mainland. There were 10 in the north region alone and there were dozens in the most majestic and flourishing middle continent. Without surprise, all these upper sects would send their perfected lords for the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Have you heard? The 1,000 Crane Tea Party this time round is watched keenly by everybody. It's lauded as the grandest cultivation occasion in the past 1,000 years and many major events are happening. Isn't the biggest event about the weapon refinement fight between 100 Refinement Sect and Hellfire Hall? What else is there? Hee, you're way too clueless. A cultivator said mysteriously, I heard that a month ago, a few major battles broke out in Wind Cloud City. Cheng Peng of Heavenly Dipper Sect was crippled and Jian Wuzong was beaten so badly that he could not even manage to withdraw his startling dermic sword. Not only did he lose his sword, he was utterly humiliated. Furthermore, both of those paragons were defeated by a single person. Which paragon is so strong? Could it be Yi Tianqing? It's a nascent soul of 100 Refinement Sect. Is that true? That's impossible, right? Since when did 100 Refinement Sect produce such a ferocious person? Why haven't I heard of him before? Many cultivators were discussing this matter as well and looked towards 100 Refinement Sect. Su Zimo had a calm expression and looked straight ahead. I heard that Heavenly Dipper Sect and Sword Sect were enraged when they heard about this. They've sent their nascent soul paragons to retrieve their dignity. There's going to be a fierce battle at this tea party. If Jian Wuzong was defeated, which other nascent soul cultivator is there in Sword Sect? Man, you don't know about that at all. Have you heard of the phenomenon ranking from 100 years ago? I've heard a little about it. It said that a catastrophe happened during the phenomenon ranking and more than half of the paragons on the phenomenon ranking were killed. Yes, a successor of Sword Sect who was ranked in the top 10 of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago has appeared. His name is Hang Chuyu and his cultivation has advanced after that catastrophe. It said that he's even stronger than Jian Wuzong. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he heard that name. Another old friend. Chapter 927 Scheme. Chapter 927, Scheme. In the elementary ancient battlefield, Hang Chuyu was tragically defeated by Su Zimo. In the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago, Hang Chuyu was no match for Dugu Jian and was ranked 8th. The gap between him and Su Zimo was even greater. However, any paragon that survived that calamity would experience an unimaginable transformation. It was the same for Hang Chuyu. The reason why Sword Sect dared to send Hang Chuyu despite Jian Wuzong's tragic defeat to Su Zimo, that was how much confidence they had in the former. However, neither Sword Sect nor Hang Chuyu realized who they were about to challenge. Perfected Lord Pang Lan of Heavenly Dipper Sect is here as well. Pang Lan? That sounds familiar. He was the number 1 on the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago. I heard that he's already half a step into the void reversion realm and no one knows his current strength. Fufu, that nascent soul of 100 Refinement Sect is doomed. That's normal. 100 Refinement Sect is about to be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. Who would care about them? Nangong Ling and the other 2 looked at Su Zimo and were secretly worried. The figures discussed by the surrounding cultivators were all notorious experts who had been famous for a long time. Even the top of the phenomenon ranking from 400 years ago had appeared. All 3 of them were worried for Su Zimo. What surprised the 3 of them was that Su Zimo's expression had not changed the entire time when he heard those discussions. His eyes were like an ancient well without any emotions. Hang Chuyu? Number 1 of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago? None of them seemed to be able to stir his emotions. Nangong Ling lamented internally, little granduncle master is too young and probably hasn't heard of these experts. Sigh, he's like a newborn calf. Ru Xian blinked her eyes and muttered internally, is little granduncle master a little crazy? Why isn't he reacting? The cultivators of the various major sects and 100 Refinement Sect headed to the resting place under the lead of the 1,000 Crane Sect female cultivators. Along the way, many cultivators discussed excitedly. You guys were not referring to the greatest event yet. Right then, a cultivator said, pretending to be profound. Tell me what else is there? Someone asked hurriedly. After beating around the bush, the cultivator coughed gently and said slowly, I heard that Chaos Essence Sect and 1,000 Crane Sect are going to have a marriage alliance. Who and who? Yi Tianqing and Fairy Lung Ro, of course. I heard that Yi Tianqing is going to propose in public. Oh my. A series of sighs and thumping sounds could be heard. Su Zimo frowned and turned to ask, who is this Yi Tianqing? Why does he sound a little familiar? Nangong Ling and the other 2 looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at a monster. Ru Xian said, Little granduncle master, what's with your memory? He's the top of the phenomenon ranking this time round and created an unprecedented golden core phenomenon. How do you not remember him? Oh, is that so? Su Zimo replied casually, no wonder his name sounds familiar. Nangong Ling and the other two were speechless. The influence of the phenomenon ranking was immense. All the cultivators present could name any cultivator on the phenomenon ranking with great familiarity, as though they knew it at the back of their heads, let alone the number one of the phenomenon ranking. Many cultivators even remembered the names of those in the past 10 phenomenon rankings. Furthermore, Yi Tianqing was the top of the Golden Core phenomenon ranking that had just ended. However, how could the three of them know that Su Zimo was neither bothered with the phenomenon ranking and nascent soul paragons, let alone remember their names? The only person he was interested in was Jian. When he saw that Nangong Ling and the other two were still staring at him with strange gazes, Su Zimo smiled. There are so many paragons. It's normal to not remember them all. But Yi Tianqing is different. Ru Xian said, he's truly strong. He ascended Myriad Phenomenon Peak all the way and suppressed his peers, creating an unprecedented Golden Core phenomenon. Little Granduncle Master, I'm afraid you don't understand how strong he is because you've never seen him in action. Nangong Ling nodded as well. Even though he's only a single rank above the second on the phenomenon ranking, I feel that there's definitely a huge difference in their combat strength. Lu Hanyin said, I'm afraid only Yi Tianqing is worthy of Fairy Leng Ro. Su Zimo was silent. If Leng Ro could find a Dao companion that she liked, Su Zimo would be truly happy for her. However, for some reason Su Zimo felt that something was amiss. The number one of the phenomenon ranking and Fairy Leng Ro. Those two are truly a match made in heaven, a cultivator beside them lamented. Hee hee. The first person who spoke sneered, I don't think so. A group of people hurried over and asked, huh? What's the matter? Is there something behind the scenes? The person looked around and lowered his voice, saying softly, I heard from some sources that Fairy Leng Ro did not agree to the marriage at all. It was Thousand Crane Sect's sect master, her master, who agreed to it. Su Zimo frowned. What's wrong with that? The path of cultivation is long and boring. It's not impossible for the two of them to fall in love after spending time together. Someone curled his lips in disdain. Tisk. The first cultivator sneered, what do you know? I heard that there's a scheme behind Yi Tianqing coming here to become Dao companions with Fairy Leng Ro. What scheme? Everyone asked. Don't forget that Yi Tianqing is Di Yin's junior brother and the two of them are known as the Chaos Essence Twin Paragons. However, Di Yin and the top of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago are mortal enemies. The cultivator continued, as for that Zimo or whatsoever, he should be dead by now. However, his friends are still alive and are good friends with Fairy Leng Ro. Hee hee. Although the cultivator did not continue, many of them revealed contemplative expressions. Su Zimo's expression gradually turned cold. I've got it. Nangong Ling suddenly said, Dean once declared that he wanted to kill those people but he failed. Later on, the successor of Tomb Sect and Puppet Sect hid in the sects respectively and refused to show themselves. Dean did not have the chance to attack either. The reason why Yi Tianqing and Fairy Leng Ro are getting married is to force these people to appear. Lu Hanyin nodded as well. I reckon that Yi Tianqing is going to help his senior brother take care of them after they appear. In that case, Fairy Leng Ro is way too pitiful. Ru Xian sighed and said indignantly, it's all that Zimo guy's fault. To think that he's the number one of the phenomenon ranking and the strongest monster incarnate in history. In my opinion, he's the weakest number one on the Golden Core phenomenon ranking in history. The more she spoke, the angrier she got. Turning around, she tugged at Su Zimo's arm and said angrily, I think that Zimo guy is even weaker than little Granduncle Master. Lu Hanyin said, you can't say that. We're only speculating right now. Perhaps Yi Tianqing and Fairy Leng Ro are truly in love. Right then, a cultivator asked, why do you think Thousand Crane Sect's sect master agreed to this marriage? She probably wants to build a good relationship with Chaos Essence Sect. The combat strength of the four unorthodox groups is average. Without the backing of an immortal sect, it's easy for them to be eliminated. For example, look at 100 Refinement Sect. Aren't they about to be removed from the four unorthodox groups? Chapter 928 Reunion. Chapter 928 Reunion. Ru Xian was truly enraged when she heard that and could not help but shout, hey! What nonsense are you guys spouting? Our 100 Refinement Sect is still one of the 4 unorthodox groups. Since when have we been removed? The cultivators that we're discussing came from an upper sect of the Middle Continent, Tyrant Emperor Mountain. A nascent soul of Tyrant Emperor Mountain said in a strange tone, "IO 100 Refinement Sect sure is impressive. We can't even remark anything about them anymore. Even the 9 immortal sects are not so overbearing, right?" You. Wuxian clenched her fists in anger and gritted her teeth. You were the one who started the rumors first. Dao Bing Yuding, who was at the front, leaped up and arrived between the 2 major sections. With a calm expression, he looked at the group of cultivators from Tyrant Emperor Mountain and said slowly, "Right now 100 Refinement Sect is still one of the 4 unorthodox groups and no one is allowed to slander it. Furthermore, even if our 100 Refinement Sect is removed from the 4 unorthodox groups, our foundation is still greater than Tyrant Emperor Mountain." The cultivator leading the group of Tyrant Emperor Mountain was also a void reversion. Seemingly wary of Dao Bing Yuding, the man turned around and shook his head, indicating for his sect's cultivators to stop discussing. Dao Bing Yuding turned and left. A nascent soul of Tyrant Emperor Mountain sneered and muttered softly, "Let's see how long more 100 Refinement Sect can continue to be cocky for." Right then, Su Zimo's gaze shifted to a courtyard not far away. There were many people gathered around and 2 female cultivators of Thousand Crane Sect stood in front of the door, seemingly guarding the courtyard. At the entrance, a white-robed man was bowing with a sincere expression, telling 2 female cultivators of Thousand Crane Sect something. When he saw the white-robed man, the coldness in Su Zimo's eyes dissipated and turned gentle, revealing a smile that he had not shown for a long time. "I'll go take a look over there. You guys can follow everyone else first." Su Zimo pointed to the courtyard and said to Nangong Ling and the other 2, "I'll go too." Seeing that there was entertainment, Wuxian decided to take a look and relieve her frustrated mood at the same time. Dao Bing Yuding turned around. When he saw that Su Zimo was the one who suggested it, he did not stop them and merely nodded. "Be careful." Nodding with a smile, Su Zimo leaped off the spirit vessel and sped towards the courtyard. The few nascent souls of Tyrant Emperor Mountain exchanged glances and left their group as well, following in secret. The white-robed man was none other than Ji Qingtian, who had joined Elixir Yang Sect and was originally a disciple of Ethereal Peak. "Fellow Taoists, may I trouble you to go in and inform her about my arrival? I'll be extremely grateful." Before he arrived, Su Zimo heard Ji Qingtian's voice. A Thousand Crane Sect female cultivator guarding the courtyard shook her head. "Leave. Senior Sister Lung Ro won't see you." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. In that case, Lung Ro lived in this courtyard. Ji Qingtian refused to give up and bowed once more, saying sincerely, "Fellow Taoists, just say that Ji Qingtian of Elixir Yang Sect requests a meeting and Fairy Lung Ro will definitely agree to it." The other Thousand Crane Sect female cultivator said indifferently, "I'd advise you to give up. Senior Sister Lung Ro won't meet anyone before the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Fairy Lung Ro is beautiful and peerless. She's not someone you can see just because you want to. Fufu, countless paragons come to seek an audience with Fairy Lung Ro every day. Who are you, Ji Qingtian? How refreshing." Even when perfected Lord Feng Xing of Zephyr Thunder Palace, who was number 7 on the phenomenon ranking, did not manage to get to meet Fairy Lung Ro when he came yesterday. "Who do you think you are, Ji Qingtian?" Many cultivators who were watching from the sidelines crossed their arms and sneered in an extremely nasty manner. Ji Qingtian's expression was terrible as he glared at those cultivators and said in a deep voice, "I, Ji Qingtian, am not some famous paragon. However, I am extremely close friends with Lung Ro and nobody can compare to me." Someone is even getting cocky now. A 5 Elements Sect cultivator mocked, "What's there to be cocky about? You're someone who is about to die. Do you think you'll get to return alive after coming to attend the Thousand Crane Tea Party?" The 5 Elements Sect was also one of the upper sects of the Middle Continent. Another person said, "I advise you to scram back to Elixir Yang Sect right now. You might still be able to make it in time. After that, hide like a coward for the rest of your life and don't come out. Otherwise, you won't be able to keep that head of yours." Ha ha ha. Many cultivators burst into laughter. Ji Qingtian grit his teeth and clenched his fists tightly without saying anything, trembling slightly. A few decades ago he was severely injured by Jian and almost died. Thereafter he stayed in the sect and did not come out. He had nothing to say now that he was being mocked about this matter. However, when he heard about the marriage alliance between Leng Ro and Yi Tianqing, he knew he could not sit idly by the sidelines. He wanted to ask Leng Ro about her intentions. If Leng Ro was a willing participant, he would naturally wish the best for her from the bottom of his heart. However, if Leng Ro was forced, he would stand out no matter what, even if it meant risking his life. It's just a bunch of mad dogs barking. There's no need to bother, fellow Taoist. Not far away, a green-robed man walked over with a man and two women behind him. The green-robed man had a rough expression, but his eyes were clear as he looked at Ji Qingtian with cupped fists and a smile. For some reason, Ji Qingtian felt that this person's gaze and smile was heartwarming. Ji Qingtian returned the greeting with cupped fists and forced a smile. Thank you for your consolation, fellow Taoist. Who are you? Who are you calling mad dogs? Oh, they are cultivators of 100 Refinement Sect. A nascent soul of 5 Elements Sect sneered. 100 Refinement Sect is about to be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups and you still have the mood to be nosy? Before Su Zimo could reply, Ru Xian could not help but retort, we're only scolding mad dogs here. If the shoe fits, wear it. Fufu, little girl, you were sure cocky earlier on, weren't you? Right then, a mocking laughter sounded behind Su Zimo's group of 4. A few nascent souls of Tyrant Emperor Mountain walked over. Their leader was burly and had cultivated to perfected nascent soul. He glared at Su Zimo's group with a ferocious expression. You Wei, we're in Thousand Crane Sect's territory. What are you trying to do? Nangong Ling's figure flashed and stood in front of Ru Xian, guarding with a focused expression. Yu Wei of Tyrant Emperor Mountain was also a nascent soul paragon who was ranked on the phenomenon ranking 200 years ago. Although his ranking was not high, he had cultivated for a long time and his cultivation realm was higher than Nangong Ling's. His combat strength was not to be underestimated. Yu Wei clenched his fists and twisted his neck, letting out crackling sounds as he laughed sinisterly. I was wary of Dao being Yu Ding of 100 Refinement Sect earlier on and let you guys off. Now, since you came out on your own, don't blame me for teaching you a lesson. The two of them were at loggerheads and were on the brink of fighting. The Thousand Crane Sect female cultivators in front of the courtyard had no intention of stopping them either. Abrupt clashes were inevitable when paragons gathered. As long as both parties did not cause too much trouble that might result in deaths, they would basically watch idly by the sidelines. Su Zimo was expressionless. Now that 100 Refinement Sect has reached this stage, all the little clowns and scoundrels want to join in and add fuel to the fire. Ha 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 ha. Yu Wei grinned widely and said, it's good that you know. Your 100 Refinement Sect is finished and I'm going to bully you. Very good. Su Zimo nodded and turned towards Yu Wei, saying indifferently, since that's the case, don't blame me. Chapter 929, Nasty Tongue. Chapter 929, Nasty Tongue. To be fair, Nangong Ling and the other two did not dare to attack in this situation. Against a nascent soul like Yu Wei who has been famous for a long time, they were even more wary. However, who was Su Zimo? He was once the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking, a monster incarnate who caused many paragons and super sects to tremble in fear. A few decades ago, Jian hunted down his best friends. And now Jian's junior brother of the same sect had come to Thousand Crane Sect to force a marriage. Everything had truly incurred Su Zimo's wrath. Although he did not join 100 Refinement Sect as Tao Lord Extreme Fire's disciple, there was no way he was going to watch someone trample on 100 Refinement Sect. When Yu Wei saw Su Zimo walk over and the two of them were getting closer, his eyes could not help but reveal a hint of cruelty. As an upper sect of the Middle Continent, Tyrant Emperor Mountain specialized in body tempering. The legacy cultivation technique of Tyrant Emperor Mountain Heaven and Earth Tyrant Emperor Manual was the establishment foundation of the sect. Although it could not compare to Glass Palace's Glass Heart Sutra and Diamond Monastery's Diamond Body, it was also one of the top cultivation techniques in Tianhuang mainland that produced a shocking physique. To Yu Wei, Su Zimo was courting death by walking towards him and closing the distance. Yu Wei laughed sinisterly and said coldly, we're not allowed to fight to the death at this Thousand Crane Tea Party. However, I can cripple you. The moment he said that, Yu Wei's eyes widened and his blood chi burst forth. His glabella shone and dermic powers surged. Tyrant Emperor Finger. Yu Wei shouted and raised his arm, extending his index finger. As blood chi surged and dermic powers gathered, right in front of countless gazes, the finger turned incomparably thick like a steel rod. Swoosh! The finger tore through the air and stabbed towards Su Zimo's face with a terrifying aura. Tyrant Emperor Finger, a top-tier dermic art of the Heaven and Earth Tyrant Emperor Manual. Its power is shocking. Yu Wei is even scarier than he was 50 years ago. He is truly a ruthless person. The moment he attacked, he had no intention of testing the waters. With his blood chi and dermic powers released at the same time, the power of that dermic art has already reached its limits. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged and he did not even stop in his tracks. He only raised his palm when the finger was right in front of him. Without releasing his blood chi or dermic powers, he grabbed the finger casually. Yu Wei's expression changed. His Tyrant Emperor Finger could not continue pushing. Not only could he not push down, it was already too late for Yu Wei to retract his Tyrant Emperor Finger as well. Break! With a cold expression, Su Zimo hollered and exerted strength in his palm, bending it down. Snap! The piercing sound of bones breaking could be heard. In front of everyone, Yu Wei's finger was snapped by Su Zimo. The broken bone was exposed and stuck to the flesh in a frightening manner. Ah! Yu Wei's eyes widened and he paused for a moment before letting out a hysterical scream. The blood drained from his face and in the blink of an eye, he broke out in cold sweat. The Heaven-Earth Tyrant Emperor Manual and Tyrant Emperor Finger were nothing in front of Su Zimo. Stepping forward, Su Zimo pressed his palm gently against Yu Wei's chest. Crack! Yu Wei's chest caved in instantly and his clothes were torn. A gigantic palm print appeared on his chest and his flesh exploded. Yu Wei spat out a mouthful of blood and his eyes dimmed. He fell backwards and landed heavily on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Even though he was on the ground, his body was still convulsing and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. The crowd was shocked. To think that a nascent soul expert like Yu Wei would be crippled after a single exchange. His essence spirit was not destroyed and he managed to survive. However, even after his body was recuperated, he would suffer from injuries and would not be able to achieve a full recovery. Su Zimo's palm merely pushed against Yu Wei's chest. However, that palm contained a high level of powerful tidal might that surged through Yu Wei's body layer after layer, shattering most of his bones. As Yu Wei had said, fighting to the death was not allowed in Thousand Crane Sect. However, Su Zimo crippled Yu Wei the moment he attacked. Everyone was speechless. They had just lamented that Yu Wei was ruthless and did not expect to meet someone even more ruthless. Initially, some cultivators who wanted to take advantage of the fact that 100 Refinement Sect was not as famous as before became hesitant. The remaining cultivators of Tyrannical Emperor Mountain looked at Su Zimo with fear in their eyes, cowering and not daring to advance. Just you wait. Finally, a nascent soul of Tyrant Emperor Mountain stood out and said weakly, "The road ahead is long. Just you wait and see." With that said, everyone from Tyrant Emperor Mountain supported Yu Wei, who was screaming in pain, and fled. Who else wants to step on the head of 100 Refinement Sect? Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings with a piercing gaze. The cultivators present exchanged glances and felt their courage weaken. Instinctively, they lowered their heads and avoided Su Zimo's eyes. There were at least hundreds of nascent souls present, but none of them dared to step forward. The mockery from earlier on had vanished as well. Ru Xian stood at the side with a look of admiration and stars in her eyes. She looked intoxicated and almost lunged forward. "Hey!" Lu Hanyan could not stand it any longer and nudged Ru Xian gently, sending a voice transmission. "Be careful, you're drooling." Ru Xian blushed and sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness. "It's a pity that little Granduncle Master looks ordinary and boorish. He'd be absolutely perfect if he was a little more handsome." "Lass, how can you say something like that without any shame?" Lu Hanyan spat softly. Ru Xian looked nervous and said hurriedly, "Senior sister, you already have senior brother Nangong. Don't fight with me for him." All right. I won't fight with you. He's all yours," Lu Hanyan said exasperatedly. Ru Xian's thoughts were flying as she fantasized alone. She murmured, "Senior sister, after little Granduncle Master and I become Dao companions, the hierarchy of our seniority will be messed up, right? Won't Master have to bow to me?" "Wow, the thought of that sure is exciting." Ru Xian laughed as she thought. This child has gone mad. Lu Hanyin shook her head. On the other hand, the group of people from Five Elements Sect who mocked Ji Qingtian earlier on felt embarrassed. Finally, someone sneered, "Fufu, your 100 Refinement Sect won't be able to survive for long. At that time, we won't even have to do anything and someone will naturally deal with you guys." Su Zimo turned slightly and glared at the person who spoke. The Five Elements Sect cultivator felt his hair stand on end when Su Zimo glared at him. The person had the intention to retreat and mustered his courage to say, "You don't have to look at me. When the Thousand Crane Tea Party starts, we'll see how 100 Refinement Sect is trampled into the ground. Let's go." With that said, he turned to leave. Swash. A breeze blew. Su Zimo had already vanished on the spot. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before the Five Elements Sect cultivator. "Who gave you permission to leave?" Su Zimo said indifferently. Without waiting for the person to react, he reached out and grabbed the person's throat with a flick of his wrist. Crackle. All his bones were dislocated. Suddenly, Su Zimo reached out and slapped the person's cheek. Piak. There was a crisp sound. Instantly, the person's cheeks turned red and swollen. Piak. Another sound. For the cultivator, it was a great humiliation to be slapped while lifted in the air right in front of everybody. "You deserve that beating for your nasty tongue." Ru Xian spat at that person and cursed fiercely. Chapter 930 Terrifying Jian. Chapter 930, Terrifying Jian. Piak, piak, piak. Lifting the cultivator of Five Elements Sect, Su Zimo slapped him repeatedly. He did not stop until the person's face was completely swollen. Ji Qingtian watched from the side and felt cathartic. Earlier on, he could only endure the ridicule from the cultivators around him. To think that this random passerby would help him vent his anger. Su Zimo tossed his arm casually. The person laid limply on the ground with his mouth filled with blood. All his teeth were shattered and he could not say a single word, merely grunting deeply. A Five Elements Sect cultivator said deeply with eyes that spewed fire, "Fellow Taoist, leave your name if you have the guts. Five Elements Sect will remember today's humiliation and repay you in the future." Su Zimo had an indifferent expression. Before he could say anything, a cultivator in the crowd exclaimed, "It's him. I've seen him before." "Who is he?" "A month ago he was the nascent soul who crippled Qing Peng in Wind Cloud City, defeated Jian Wuzong and took away the startling Dermic sword. There's no way I'm wrong." Ah. The crowd fell into an uproar. The battle a month ago had long spread through Thousand Crane Sect and was the focus of discussions among many cultivators. Everyone knew that the paragons of Heavenly Dipper Sect and Sword Sect would definitely regain their dignity at the Thousand Crane Tea Party and there would definitely be a huge battle. I heard that not only did he defeat Jian Wuzong, the latter did not even have a chance to withdraw his sword against this man's suppression. Who is that? Why haven't I heard of him before? I think he's called Mo Ling. Su Zimo did not hide the name Mo Ling. It was not difficult to obtain this information within a month. Most cultivators were at a loss when they heard that name. Only Ji Qingtian's heart skipped a beat. Back in Ethereal Peak, his junior brother and close friend, Su Zimo, assumed the name Mo Ling and stayed in the capital of Great Zhou as a weapon refinement master. Everyone had to address him as Mr. Mo. Later on, at the Sect competition, Missouri Ling shocked everyone and became famous throughout the entire Great Zhou dynasty. Of course, there were countless cultivators called Mo Ling in the world. Furthermore, apart from his green robes, there was no resemblance between this Mo Ling and Su Zimo. Ji Qingtian did not manage to associate Mo Ling with Su Zimo. Only now that he heard the name Mo Ling he recalled some memories. Let's go. He won't be smug for long. That's right. Once Hang Qiuyu of Sword Sect and perfected Lord Panglan of Heavenly Dipper Sect arrive, he'll be in for it. Everyone from Five Elements Sect said a few more vicious words before turning to leave. When the surrounding cultivators saw that there was no commotion, they dispersed as well. Arriving before Su Zimo, Ji Qingtian bowed slightly and smiled. "I'm Ji Qingtian of Elixir Yang Sect. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist." "I'm Mo Ling." Su Zimo cupped his fists as well and looked at Ji Qingtian with a fake smile. For some reason, Ji Qingtian felt that the way Mo Ling looked at him was a little strange and did not seem distant. "Hello, my name is Ru Xian." Ru Xian closed in as well and waved at Ji Qingtian. This is my little granduncle master. Impressive, right? Yes. Ji Qingtian nodded sincerely. Fellow Taoist, I'm impressed by your strength. Pausing for a moment, Ji Qingtian continued, however, I heard that the combat strength of Hang Qiuyu and perfected Lord Panglan is not to be underestimated as well. Fellow Taoist, you have to be careful and not look down on them. Nangong Ling and the other two revealed worried expressions when they heard the names of the two experts. The three of you can head back first. Turning around, Su Zimo instructed Nangong Ling and the other two, go settle down at your residence and don't run around. There are many people watching 100 Refinement Sect right now and it's not safe here. Little granduncle master, what about you? Ru Xian asked. I have something else to do. You guys can head back first. Su Zimo's tone was calm but unquestionable. Nangong Ling and the other two exchanged glances before bowing and leaving, speeding towards their residence. Since you have something important to attend to, I won't disturb you any further. Ji Qingtian cupped his fists. Fellow Taoist, if you need any help in the future, feel free to look for me at Elixir Yang Sect. I'll definitely do my best. Su Zimo smiled. What a coincidence. I have something for you right now. Ha. Ji Qingtian replied hurriedly, please speak, fellow Taoist. Su Zimo looked around. Sweeping his gaze, Ji Qingtian saw that there were still many cultivators lingering around, watching them. He understood immediately and said, fellow Taoist, if you don't mind, please come to my residence for a chat. All right. Su Zimo agreed without hesitation. Elixir Yang Sect's residence was not too far away and the two of them arrived in no time. Ji Qingtian poured a cup of hot tea for Su Zimo before saying, fellow Taoist, there's no one else here. Please speak. Brother Ji, how have you been? The muscles on Su Zimo's face twitched and his bones transformed. In the blink of an eye, he reverted to his refined, handsome appearance and smiled at Ji Qingtian. Ji Qingtian's eyes widened. At first, his eyes were filled with shock and then ecstasy. Ah! He exclaimed and took a step forward, grabbing Su Zimo's wrist excitedly. Su Zimo shook his head gently and made a shushing sound. Ji Qingtian took a deep breath hurriedly to compose himself and whispered, Zimo, it's you. It's great seeing that you are fine. Even though Ji Qingtian's voice was suppressed, he could not conceal his joy and his voice trembled slightly in his agitation. Su Zimo patted Ji Qingtian on the shoulder. I'm fine. Sorry for worrying everyone. Although we know that you shouldn't be in any danger given your capabilities, we were still worried because you went missing for 100 years. Ji Qingtian thumped Su Zimo on the chest and smiled. Now that I see that you're fine, I can finally let go of this burden. I heard about everything that happened to you guys. Killing intent flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Don't worry, Brother Ji. I'll definitely take Di Yin's life. When he heard Su Zimo mention that, Ji Qingtian seemed to recall the hunt with lingering fear. His face turned pale as he shook his head. 80 years ago, when Di Yin reappeared and came looking for us, he was already at the perfected nascent soul realm. Di Yin is way too strong. Nobody can imagine how strong he is without fighting him personally. I was completely helpless against him. At that time I was saved by Elixir Yang Sect's experts who were thankfully nearby. I only recovered after recuperating for more than 10 years. After pondering for a moment, Ji Qingtian continued, Don't worry, little fatty is fine as well. He was severely injured by Di Yin and entered a tomb by mistake which turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Suddenly Su Zimo frowned and murmured, Di Yin was at the perfected nascent soul realm when he reappeared 80 years ago. This means that he merely took 20 years to advance to the nascent soul realm before reaching the perfected state? Ji Qingtian nodded with a bitter smile. That man has terrifying fortune and shocking talent. Coupled with the inheritance of the human emperor, he's like a tiger with wings. He's truly a monster incarnate that hasn't appeared in 10,000 years. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.